Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Raging Tomato. I'm Sarah, as you all should know. Usually, I'm a moderator on this lovely channel. We run some crazy panels, lots of shows, and all sorts of fun stuff. But tonight, yes, tonight, I've got the wonderful, amazing debater of all debaters. I've got the lovely Andrew Wilson here with me. He has agreed to come on and do a nice little interview so we could get to know him from the tomatoes world and perspective. So thank you, Andrew, for coming and tuning in tonight. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks
Um,
for having me.
Absolutely. And just a quick shout out to everybody in the chat. I know a lot of you are looking forward to this. Of course, we've got Siege D coming in with the super chat of 4.99 already before we even got started. Support to Wifey Tomato. Glenn came up with that. And the Bratty Tomatoes. Replay gang. Need my sleep, so my judgment is impaired. Yes, I hope you are sleeping well. And of course, Uncle Gun's coming in always with the pins. Michelle, the wonderful wrench of all wrenches. We've got Glenn Lawrence giving a shout out. I think he's live right now, actually. Broken System, Grid One Motorsports. Enjoyed his show today. If you haven't checked him out, Primal Studies. Haven't seen you in a while. Where you been, bud? Crack-a-lackin', Smoky Guru, Jorge Max, and of course, Carrie. Carrie, we're not putting based on. Axeman, you're new. Where'd you come from? I'd be interested to see where you're coming from. Byzantine Dream. Who else? We've got so many of you in here. Oh, and shout out to Team Fatty. Thank you for the 50. Wonderful to have you back again. Looking forward to coming on yours sometime as well. And of course, past. And then, of course, the most important, who's always here, my lovely, darling mother, number one supporter, biggest cheerleader and fan, Mama Tomato. So, everybody be nice to Mama. And I think Grumpy Tomato, my lovely father, might be making an appearance as well in the chat. So, shout out to everybody. I'm so glad you came. But yes, Andrew, let's get to you.
Okay.
You're not in a good mood tonight, are you?
No, I'm in a fine mood.
I'm teasing. Oh yes, Dad is here. Hello, Father. So Andrew, the first question I always ask everybody that comes on here for an interview is, "Who are you?" In
My name
accordance to
is
Andrew.
my name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the host of the Crucible. It's the fastest growing debate channel on the internet, to my knowledge. We've been scouring the internet so I can see if that claim holds up, and so far it holds up. So, as far as I know, it is the fastest growing debate channel anywhere online. I'm a Bloodsports debater, political satirist, and a political commentator.
Hmm, easy peasy then. So I guess you kind
Do you
of
have
like I
music playing in the background?
Oh yeah, I can turn it down a little bit. I usually have it pretty low just for
No, no, no. It's no problem. I just wanted to know what it was, if it was on my end or your
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely on mine. All right, I'll put it back up just a nudge. All right.
end.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what you identify is to your channel, correct? Like some people have like some people like to say their parents or they're married or different things like that, but I love how you kind of cue into your channel and keep it focused on that. It's a good way to go, I think. So bringing it back to you in terms of the personal side of you, did you have a role model growing up?
Yeah, my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what for you, like what was so special about making him your role model? I mean, there are the obvious answers,
My
but
dad was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis before I was born, and they gave him a toe tag and said he was going to die in a year. And
oh,
he not only beat the odds, but went on to start a very successful business and raise an entire family. So
wow.
he, yeah, he's the man. Still is the man. He's still awesome.
Oh, well, my father is my role model as well. Fathers are amazing people. I'm assuming that's still your role model to today.
Yeah, he's still
You
just as
still look
awesome
to
as he
him.
was when I was a little kid.
Mhm. And speaking of being a little kid, what did you wanna be when you grow up, when you were young?
A Bloodsport debater.
No superhero, fireman, police officer, army man?
No, I didn't have any aspirations that way.
Really?
No, I never really moved. Never really moved from a passion of what I wanted to do when I got older. So that was not really something. I didn't really have some master plan when I was a young kid. I mostly just read. I used to write a lot more. I don't write as much as I used to. But I never really I just never really had that. Oh, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be a cop when I grow up. That just I never really had that.
Really? So what did you like to write? Like, probably you were doing dissertations in age 5?
No, not at all. I liked writing fiction.
Really?
Hmm.
Like what style of fiction?
Mostly, say fantasy, sci-fi.
Wow. Did you ever publish anything later on?
I didn't. What ended up happening is I got busy and just never completed anything ever. Yeah, it's just like never. So
Do you have like a whole catalog full of unfinished stories?
yeah, I do. I mean, maybe one day I'll get back to them all. But then you go back and you read them and you're like, man, I suck. I sucked at this.
So, by way of like sci-fi fantasy, are we talking like outer space kind of stuff, alien kind of stuff, robotic stuff? What?
No, more world building Tolkien style was more my jam.
Oh, impressive. Is that like Tolkien, like Lord of the Rings?
Hmm.
Is that Tolkien? Wow, that's one of my favorites, actually. Well, movie wise, never read the books, so I'm okay with that. All right. So writing, and then you never really felt like there was something that you had to do when you grow up. But how did you end up in debating then? Is that something you started early on?
No, during no skills in it at all during the pandemic. Um, I had some time off because they had shut down all of the factories, which were in the industry that I was working in due to the
Hmm.
pandemic. So um, I was going on Facebook to various groups and this and that because everybody was arguing about COVID at the time. So anyway, I came across one Facebook group and we started tangling, and I noticed that they had this stupid show called Tabletop that they were doing. And it was just like dumb broad and her three simps, and they were arguing about bullshit. And they pissed me off, and I would talk chat, and I was basically the only one in their chat talking. So they finally brought me on, and I just eviscerated them. And then I came back the next night. They brought me on again. I eviscerated them again, and this started happening so frequently that they started going and getting like their educated buddies to come in and tangle with me. So when they would do that, I would destroy them too, and then it just kept going from there. But that's how I
Wow.
got into it.
Okay. And then, so at what point did you say, I'm going to make my own YouTube channel? Or did you start on a different platform on your own
Well,
outside of
so
journaling?
the YouTube channel was basically just there um, because they were the people that I was working with at the time. They were concerned that Facebook would ban their channels because they had done it multiple times before and they'd lose the videos. So they basically just made YouTube as a backup. So they would just stream that, so they had a backup of these videos, basically for like their own memory hole. Right, it was just
Hmm.
for them. But people started to come and watch, and they started landing some big debaters, and I started tangling up with them, and
Hmm.
so it just kind of progressed from there.
So you obviously started with the COVID debates. What other debate topics did you get into after that? Or was it just so variable?
Oh yeah, it was all over the place. We debated everything from economics to religion to, I mean, just everything across the board.
Wow. Um, so what like tickled your fancy at it? Like was it just fun doing it, or was it like I'm just so good at kicking ass that I have to keep going?
Well, I hate progressives. They suck more than anything on planet Earth. Progressives are awful human beings, and so any chance I get to air my grievances at these horrific people who have basically mutilated the nation and my countrymen. I try to go out of my way to do that if I can. So.
I love it. All right, so you started your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember seeing you a while back, and there was like maybe I think you had like 5,000 subscribers at the time. Now you're what, like over 80 now?
I think we just hit 81 today. Yeah.
My goodness. So tell me about that journey and getting started with the YouTube channel and kind of what it took to get it moving, get it going, and making your way.
Well, it was actually really quite difficult because I did not have a good falling out with the people whose channel I was on before. So we ended up in kind of like this little, I guess you can call it a micro civil war for a while.
Mhm.
So I went off and started the Crucible, and they weren't thrilled about that because they had a different debate platform, but theirs sucked and mine was good. So, at first I was laughed at, mocked, and scoffed, and told, you're never going to get anywhere with this, and you're, basically retarded, and everybody hates you, and blah 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 blah. The same shit you hear from everybody all the time. There's a huge pack of haters who follows me around the internet, which is fine. They can do that, but
Mhm.
essentially what's happened is they were all wrong. So every one of them was wrong. I put on one of the best debate platforms anywhere on the internet, in my opinion, ever. I don't think there's a better debate platform, which exists. And I also combine political entertainment with the debate platform. And
Mhm.
so there's content there for everybody. And since the beginning, since I started the Crucible, there's always been way more engagement than most channels get for the subscription viewership. So, I mean, it wasn't uncommon when we had a couple thousand subscribers to have 400 people live watching. And now we're to a point where it's not uncommon for us to have between 3 and 6,000 live watching. And our videos get hundreds of thousands of views, and then the clips will get millions of views depending on which
Mhm.
platforms we're on. So essentially, that's how I did it. I built it from the ground up.
Wow. So, what would be kind of like the hardest obstacle to get through when building your platform, your channel, like your even down to your character, like you as a person that you're,
Hmm.
you know, what's the toughest thing to get through?
Well, it's understanding that you suck, right? And nobody. There are born entertainers, but to be a good YouTube personality or a good entertainer, you have to have some kind of charisma. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of people who have no charisma, and they're never going to go anywhere no matter what. There's just like no matter how much they invest in their channel, no matter how much they invest in equipment, no matter how much they invest in any of that, they're never going to go anywhere. But then you have the other side of the coin, which is that there's people who are kind of natural born entertainers with a ton of charisma, but they won't reinvest anything. So the first 2.5 years, well, I get not 2.5, I guess 2 years. The first 2 years, I reinvested everything that was made on the channel back into the channel. And I would practice day and night inside different debate discords. I would practice everywhere that I could. I was always making bits and skits, and I probably scrapped 10 bits for every one that I've actually released because I just
Mhm.
didn't like them. So essentially, I put a lot of effort into it to build it from the ground up and then make connections all over the place. And you just kind of slowly build that way. But the
Mhm.
big thing is making also the right friends. So we were blacklisted really early on by left wing Twitch and left wing YouTube, who absolutely hated my guts. And we did not have the audience at that point to fight back.
Right.
So we would just get ratioed, and we would get destroyed in the polls and everything else. No matter how badly I beat these leftists, they're dishonest pieces of shit, so they would just ratio it anyway, no matter what. But when we started to begin to build off platform and we started to build an audience that had nothing to do with the standard Twitch poll, which essentially required you to get on your knees and bow to the Coomer Gremlin Destiny and the rest of these Twitch poll lunatics. And I refused to do that. So we built off those platforms. We built a huge audience off the platform. So what happened is, as we began to get very, very popular, now we can tangle up with those people, and it's not so easy for them to do that to us anymore.
Right.
And So now if you're gonna basically if you're gonna fight in the big leagues, you're gonna have to have people who are willing to tangle even in the comment section, in the poll section, this type of thing.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we kind of came back with a vengeance, but I refuse to do it. I refuse to kowtow to these people, and I refuse to embrace their dumb, degenerate ideology in order to push my channel forward.
I don't disagree with you. It kind of gets to a point where you just kind of gotta go off and do your own thing, and if you build it, they will come per se. If your content's good enough, if you know what you're doing, if you're, stick to your guns on that, I think that inevitably you're gonna develop a following on your own, and it'll happen for you. So good for you. Kudos to you. What would you say the easiest part of this road and this journey has been?
Well, I mean, I guess the easiest part for me is the benefits part, where I only have to work part time now. That's really nice, and I can spend a lot more time with my family, so that's great.
Yeah. I
That's the easier part, but it's a trade-off, right? So it's like
Mhm.
it's working 60 hours a week plus running your channel on top of that.
Yeah.
So in that way you sacrifice all that time so that you can gain time back. Essentially you're buying time. That's what you're doing.
Right.
You're buying time back.
Yeah, that's the position I think I'm in right now because I still, have my 9 to 5 and then I stream 3 nights a week, or sometimes I'll pop up on other people's channels outside of that and, it gets to be a lot, but I know that there's inevitably going to be some type of end result, I'm producing something, and hopefully it'll be worth my time. I hope. I hope. But so would you prefer, because you're very blood sport oriented, like it's very it gets heated. You like heated debates. Would you prefer to do a more formal version where you're just having a mild conversation, making the arguments and sticking to, a civilized conversation, or is the blood sport just it's that's who you are?
So I tend to match energy. So it depends on the energy of the opponent. If they're
Mhm.
playing it straight, I play it straight. But if they're being kind of gut punching or backbiting or just kind of pieces, then I kind of match that energy, right? So if you're snarky, I'm snarky. If you want to be sarcastic, I'll be sarcastic. If you want to take low blows, then I'll hit you back with a low blow. So it all really kind of depends on how the opponent wants to move the debate. But I mean, I would vastly actually prefer not to always get down in the weeds and quagmire,
Mhm.
because that's basically the lowest tier of debating. But people mostly take it there when they're losing the actual debate. So there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it.
That's a piece I noticed about you, particularly when you ask, you know, the yes or no questions, or you're trying to come to some form of agreement. Can we at least agree on this? Like, this is the baseline. Let's agree here and then move forward. And I think that that's where people get hung up the most because they're not willing to agree to anything just because you're saying it.
Yeah, well, they're
And
not willing to make, and so this is a big problem, right? Is
mhm,
you can make massive concessions and win the debate overwhelmingly.
mhm,
Where people usually lose debates is because they refuse to concede any ground.
yeah,
So it's the refusal to concede, which becomes then irrational and then becomes illogical, and then their kind of worldview begins to collapse under it. And a lot of times it's because they think there's a gotcha that's not coming, or
right.
sometimes they think, you know what I mean? It all just depends on the opponent, but ultimately you actually gain a lot more by conceding to some kind of basics and moving on from the basics.
Mhm. So would you one of my questions was regarding like the optical win versus the actual win of the argument. Because it is blood sport, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of optically win an argument. Whether you're right or wrong at the end of it doesn't even matter. Like if you're putting somebody in their place and they're not really um, able to communicate or verbalize their actual argument because they're too hung up on other things, there can be the what's viewed as the optical win. What do you have a preference on, having the optical win versus the argument win, or how does that work for you?
Well, my preference is always to destroy a person twice. So I destroy them within their own worldview, and then destroy them with my worldview.
Mhm.
So basically demonstrate that not only is my paradigm better, but that their paradigm's completely wrong, right? Because you could have
Mhm.
a paradigm which is correct, but just not as good as a different paradigm or a different kind of worldview. But I prefer to do both. Those are the ones that I consider victories. And they're rare to get. It's actually rare to be able to do that, but occasionally I'm able to do it, and that's nice. But most of the time, it gets drug off into the weeds over something else, or people try to divert, obfuscate, do anything they can possibly do not to engage in the argument anymore because they're actually afraid of where it's going.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like you are pretty good at handing out what I'd call freebies, where you kind of like almost give them the opportunity to have a little win in the conversation, but they're too hot-headed to see it, that they kind of, like, they almost don't even realize what they're doing, and then they completely butcher it, and it's like you are handing them a freebie in that moment, and all they had to do was take it, and they are just, too confused by what's going on. Um, and I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but I always feel like you want your opponents to do better. You want the challenge. You want them to come back with a good argument.
Well, so I understand that for some people they want to do a debate with me because they want to get their channel on the map. And I think
Mhm.
that that's fine. And so I want to give people opportunities to do that, and I do it all the time. But unfortunately, for some people, if they think that they're having a bad showing, which I mean, you should kind of expect in a way to have a bad showing, right? If that's what your motivation is, but you don't have a lot of experience, you're probably going to have not a great showing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do try to take it kind of easy on them, or give a lot of ground. You know what I mean, to their kind of worldview. But if they feel like they're doing poorly, I feel like that'll affect whatever they could have gotten, from channel memberships or subs or whatever coming over. And so a lot of times they'll start spurging out. This is everybody from professional debaters down to complete amateurs. People just lose their minds over that stuff. So
Yeah. What that's my dad. The leftists love freebies. Um, so so with that, like who would you say your biggest challenge ever was, or the best debate you've ever gone into?
I used to enjoy the debates with Destiny.
Mhm.
Um, I thought that he had a slight rhetorical edge, but that I had a better logical edge, and so I thought that
Mhm.
that was matched up pretty well. And we used to have some good back and forth. But most people on the left are just insane preference based hedonistic losers. So annihilating them usually only takes a few minutes, and they're done. So it's I just I don't have very much respect for the left wing debaters who exist in prominence anywhere in any of these spaces. Most of them just suck.
Yeah. Father wants to know, how did Andrew come to being on the Raging Tomato? Actually, I moderated a debate between Andrew playing with fire, Sergio, and Ashley. Now we had already interacted a little bit mildly prior to that. I think I had been in his chats. He had also done a lot of stuff, like a lot of work with Ashley and her debate stuff. But outside of that, I think we've been kind of in proximity of each other, but not necessarily collaborating or anything to that degree. So, and then there was another question from Primal Studies. He asked if Andrew wasn't doing online debates or streaming, what would he be doing instead?
Same thing I always did: work and read.
What do you like to read?
I read more fiction than I do nonfiction, but I do read quite a bit of nonfiction too. It just depends on what piques my interest. Sometimes I like to read nonfiction on just the history of random items, especially gun-related items. I enjoy that.
Mhm.
I
Really?
enjoy war history. I enjoy history, I guess, more than anything on
Mhm.
the nonfiction side. But I have a problem where I have trouble retaining dates. So I
Yeah.
understand. So I remember all the information, but I can't remember the dates with the information because I don't care. I don't compartmentalize it very well. Um, but uh, but yeah, anyway, so I do enjoy focusing on that. I like to read about social history as well. I think that that's some those are things I've always been interested in, and then how humans interact and deal with each other. Then on the fiction side, mostly science fiction, fantasy, that kind of thing.
Wow. So, with all of the reading, do you do a lot of prep work for your debates? And
I take every debate seriously.
hmm
So
so
I prep ahead. I even live stream the prep. But yeah, I prep
mhm,
for every debate for hours. That's why it takes such a toll. Sometimes I'll have like 4 in a week,
mhm.
because there's so many people who want to do one. Um, and specifically with me, like I enjoy moderating them too, but a lot of them specifically want to do one with me. So it's a lot of prep work for sure.
That's. I bet Andrew knows what date the War of 1813 took place.
What year?
Oh, wait,
What
no,
year did the War of
it's
1812 happen?
funny. My dad would do something like that too. Oh goodness. All right. So with all of the debate prep, like are you I know I've seen you look up other videos of your opponents and pull up other debates or other conversations they've had before, but are you also reading outside of that? Like based on the topic, like are you pulling up articles or statistics and things of that nature?
Yeah, but I usually do all of that off stream.
Mhm.
So I always assume that my opponents are watching me, as I review or do debate prep, and I'm always
Mhm.
right. They always are. So
Mhm.
I never give anything away. I just kind of give a bit of commentary, summarizing their arguments, so that the audience knows what I'm probably going to be dealing with, and that's it.
Hmm, interesting. What was the worst debate you've ever had?
Um, Probably the worst debater that I've ever interacted with is the most bad faith debater on the internet's Vosh. He's the most bad faith. That I probably dealt with, which I still don't mind, because beating people who are bad faith is actually pretty easy to do, right? Like I prefer that they're bad faith because then they just look stupid. Um, but that one was, what's especially difficult to do. In this is something that a lot of people have a hard time with who are on our team. The opposition essentially admits that they're a complete fucking degenerate who's willing to have sex with dead bodies and corpses and everything else in between.
No.
If they admit that they're willing to do all of these things, um, there's not really a place to go, right? Once they've just
Mhm.
kind of admitted that they're the scum of the earth, a lot of people have trouble moving in past that into why that foundationally should be incorrect. They just kind of go with the, did you just admit you'd screw a dead body? But what happens when the other person's like, yeah,
Yeah,
what do you do
okay,
then?
so what do you do?
Well, then you go after the foundational principles. But uh, that basically has to open up a meta-ethical debate at that point, and meta-ethical debates are notoriously boring. So that's when you have to put your entertainer hat on and get into the logic of it.
What is meta-ethical?
It's just basically a branch of philosophy.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so how would you like if you I'm completely dumb to it, how would you explain that? Like a branch of philosophy, like I don't know.
So, like an example of this, um, you know what the laws of logic are?
Yeah, like the
You know,
fallacies?
well, no, not the fallacies, the actual laws of logic, like the law of non-contradiction, for instance.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the you could get into the question essentially of, how do you ground knowledge, and what is the principle behind you grounding knowledge, and are there epistemic truths? Things like this. In order to do that, you have to get into kind of some unseen truths which exist, and then kind of tangle over whether they're objective or not objective.
Mhm. What would be an unseen truth? Like an example?
Like the law of non-contradiction, that would be
Oh,
an
okay.
unseen
My
truth.
apologies. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm
Like, for
tracking.
instance, you can't talk into that microphone and not talk into that microphone at the same time, right?
You're right.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's the law which governs that is an unseen law, right?
Okay. Okay.
So so those
Makes
are, Yeah, those are moving into that's like moving into a whole different whole different discussion.
Fair enough. If somebody was starting their path to being a debater, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Um, yeah, that's I mean, that's tough. The first thing I would do, and we're gonna put out a series on this pretty soon, I think, because
Mhm.
probably 7 out of 10 DMs I get is on this topic, this specific topic. I never actually modeled myself after anybody or modeled my style after anybody. I didn't really even follow much in the way of YouTube commentators at all, or Twitch politics at all. That wasn't the world that I was in. So I came at it from an entirely different direction. So I've actually had to think about how I would tell somebody else to model how they would want to go after debates, because I can't really point to specific people. I didn't model anything after anybody.
Mhm.
So
So, this series would be kind of like a how-to or
yeah, we'll go over we'll basically go over basic arguments, and you have to understand too that online debating is not the same as doing formal
right,
debates where
right.
people are utilizing formal argumentation. That's a whole different thing. So online debates, or Bloodsport debates, or even informal online debates, they have a kind of certain pathway that they all take. And I think I could show people how to utilize rhetoric and logic correctly in order to inform their worldview well enough that they could make some really solid ground up.
Huh. And shout out to TO coming over from Team Fatty's crew. Thank you for the $10. We appreciate you. Team Fatty's chat is the most lit chat I've ever met in my life. You guys are amazing and we had so much fun Monday night and thank you. I'm so glad you're all back. It's been a blessing. Um all right. So like do you ever get bored in a debate? Do you get bored with certain people or certain arguments or going over the same talking points or topics again and again and again?
No.
No? Is it just because it's a new person or
Um, well, people think that they've heard it all. You haven't heard it all. And no matter what, you're never going to hear it all. And everybody kind of advances their worldview in a slightly different way. And so sometimes you have to almost play detective as you kind of ferret out what they actually believe and why they believe it. And it's almost always interesting to do.
Mhm. Hmm, fair enough. I mean, I feel like, debate for me is fun to watch, but I would never wanna be in it just because it's just too much heat going on, and I'd much prefer to be on the facilitation side of things, but sometimes I get bored listening to the same talking points and the same arguments and the same exact thing again and again, even though it's all in a different style and from different people, sometimes it's like, "Ugh, been there, done that, heard that before." So I didn't know if you being in that position, if it would be like, "Ugh,
Well, I
I
think
already had."
that I do a much larger variance of topics than most people
Mhm.
do. So
Yeah, I feel
it
like you're all
stays,
over the place.
yeah, it stays pretty fresh for me.
That's good. Are there any, like, what would your favorite topic be?
Um, let's see, what would my favorite topic be? I would say normative politics, actually, my favorite topic. But I rarely actually get to debate it. So,
Really?
yeah, I rarely actually get to debate just normative politics and prescriptions. That would be kind of nice to do, where you already had kind of a preset agreement with people that we kind of agree how we want the country to go, and then argue about prescriptions. That would be a lot of fun. But it's in these spaces, people their worldview is so diametrically opposed, that you can't even agree on what descriptors are. So like you can't even get past the descriptive phase to the prescriptive phase.
Mhm. Okay, so politics, would you ever wanna go into politics then?
No.
No? You just like to argue it?
Hmm.
Fair enough. What about politics is kind of a turn away for you?
I don't want to get shot.
Wait, do you think politics would be more dangerous than, like, being a blood sport debater?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
What
Do
I
you
would be
ever
terrified of is that I would get popular and then, suddenly I have a heart attack, you know what I
have a
mean?
JFK moment?
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be kinda scary. What about, okay, what about being in the position you are with YouTube and the content you create and all of the different debates? Like, do you ever receive, threats or or anything like that?
Yeah, I get them every day.
Yeah, I mean, like, just in the chats or, like,
No, I
actual
get them
actual
DM'd. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, they threaten to my wife, kids,
God.
um, they threaten my family members, they threaten my parents, everything that they can possibly do.
Is there I mean, essentially, I guess the only thing you can do is report it, right? I mean, there's not much you can do at the end of the day but do that if that's what you're doing, but that's terrible. I mean, are they just mad because you win a debate, or are they just mad at your viewpoints, or
Well, for I think that there's a mix, but what I think really started to really make people upset was that, from their perception, I make a lot of money, like, from
Mhm,
their perspective, um,
mhm,
and it's because people don't really think about it. They'll see it like a $10,000 stream. They don't realize, well, YouTube took 30% of that already, right?
yeah,
So that takes it down to 7,000. And then I have staff members and I pay, and it's not like paying people is cheap. And so, but I think what happens is people get a perspective in their brain. How dare this guy make a lot of money um, doing entertainment? How dare he, this scumbag? And I think that that causes more derangement than anything else.
yeah. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, I'm a one-man show in my instance, and, I kind of cringe at the idea of paying a monthly subscription for something or an annual one for the StreamYard or things like that, and that, for me, like, in my position, costs a lot of money. So if you actually have people working for it, I'm guessing they're running your clips and, I don't know what they're, like, are you doing equipment stuff or what all do you have a team for?
Oh, I mean, we have, if you've seen, yeah, and I know you have, the production value on the Crucible is top notch.
Mhm.
I mean, bar none's top notch, and we have graphics designer who also acts as a show producer, Mr. Enigmatic. He works for me, and then yeah, I have another guy who works for me as well. Can't get into the details of what he does, and then
Mm.
yeah, I have a clips guy as well. So there's
Wow.
multiple people who um, who get fed by the Crucible essentially. But I think that what happens is people get these crazy conceptions in their brain. Like a guy was telling me the other night, oh, you made 50 grand in a week or some crazy. I was like, what are you talking about, you crazy lunatic? But people, no, I think nothing causes derangement more than that.
Well, that would be just the same as, one thing I like to look at it is the way people view celebrities, right? Like, they're not real people. To me, that's how people tend to view them. Like, they're not real people. We can impede on their privacy. We can, just walk up to them and say anything. We can hate them. We can troll them. We can whatever. And they always forget to take the humanitarian approach in terms of this is a person. They have a life. They have their personal things going on. They have family, kids, parents, brothers, sisters, all of that above. And I look at the YouTube as kind of the same way. Like, people don't realize that we still are people. We still have lives outside of this. We shut the computer down. We go. We have dinner with our families. We take our kids to the parks. We do all of those normal things. And sometimes I think that people fail to recognize that we're not just in a box on a screen. This is not where we live. We live outside of that.
Oh no,
You
it's
know.
worse. It's worse than that. So what people do is they build an effigy of you.
Hmm.
It's not you. They don't even pay attention to what you say most of the time. They get an idea of some other grouping of bad things that they don't like. And you may have said something similar to one of those bad things, let's say. And so they'll map that entire grouping of bad things onto you. and build that effigy around you of those bad things and then ruthlessly attack that effigy. In this way, they can map onto you that you're evil.
Are you evil?
Well, I mean, that's what's being mapped on is that I'm evil. And so, therefore, because I'm evil, that justifies any horrible thing which is done to me.
Right. No, that makes sense. I understand. I mean, there's like I feel like we all have our trolls or our haters, and I mean, there's actually a crew that goes around, and if I even so much as show up in a chat, they magically show up there too and start trolling and doing their thing, and it just kind of gets to a point. But I mean, I'm sure yours is even more so on that.
Well, considering that I've been swatted multiple times,
What is swatted?
where people call SWAT teams to my house.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, huh?
Like while you're streaming or
Yeah, it's
like
happened while I've been streaming. Yeah.
what? This is the thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. What they do
Oh,
is they call the cops and they tell them that I brutally murdered my entire family, and they pretend that they're me, and then say that I'm going to off myself, and so they send SWAT teams to the house, and they surround the house, thinking that they have a barricaded suspect situation, and so they're going to kick in the door and take you out.
oh my god. It was your family home when they did this?
Yeah, it's happened to me multiple times where the whole family's
Oh
been here.
my god. Well, like, what is the trauma effect of that afterwards? Like, how do you clean that up? Like, emotionally, mentally, physically deal with it?
um, I mean, the only thing that you can really do is go to like your local police departments and declare, but they do it anyway. Like they have to do it anyway. There's nothing you can do about it. One guy was so prolific at it, they finally caught him, which was interesting, and threw him in jail. But that was only because somebody got killed as a result of him swatting them. And so they hired a
No.
private detective and they tracked him down.
Oh my god. That is dangerous.
Hmm.
So, I mean, but I mean, in terms of like, because your kids are there, right? I mean, what is the toll that's taken on them in terms of, like, people
Yeah,
kicking in their
I'm
door?
not gonna get
Oh,
into any of
sorry.
that.
Okay, my apologies. I'm just thinking of, like, putting myself in those shoes and thinking of the cleanup for that. That would be a lot. That would be a
Mhm.
whole lot. Oof. So with that being said, like, when you come to,
Now,
uh
this is so funny. This chick in your
what
chat, so naive.
which
She
one?
says, when the wife and kids answer the door perfectly okay, doesn't it de-escalate? No, they don't. They don't come knock on your door. They surround your house with machine guns and they get on a bullhorn and tell you to come out with your hands up, or else they're
Oof.
going to do bad thing to you. They don't knock on your door. They don't go, "Oh, hello. I got a call that you might have murdered your entire family." Yeah, they don't do that. That's not what they do.
Wow. That sounds so dangerous. Like, what could the side everything that could come from that. Oof. And, oh, alright, I'll move on from that one because that's stumbling my brain. So with networking and collaborating, like, do you feel like there can be kind of cutthroat in especially in kind of the communities we sit in? Do you feel like the making associations or friendships or collaborating with people can lead to kind of turmoil or harder times or make it worse off, or how do you trust people in this industry?
Well, so you follow a couple of rules. Rule one is don't get close with any female streamers ever. It's always a bad idea. If you do any sort of collaboration, interviews, things like that, keep them completely at arm's length and only do this is the date, time, this and that. Never
Mhm.
be friends with them. They're always trying to pump you for information so that they can later on down the road attempt to use it against you for whatever purposes. Never give them any personal, private details of your life. Never
Mm,
tell them anything. Essentially, never become friends with any female streamers. It's always a bad idea. That's rule one. Not
yeah.
ever. Never do it. It's always a bad idea. It's even a bad idea for women to be friends with women streamers. It's always a bad
Mhm.
idea. That's one. And then two, work with everybody. If they backbite you once, get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Period. And you'll usually do well.
Do you pay attention to people's reputations? Like if they have a bad reputation working with others, or they always have, they're known for coming in bad faith or things like that. Like, do you still try, like, do one trial run with them, or do you listen to the word on the street?
I don't ever listen to anybody about anybody
Fair enough.
because the problem is that there's so much interpersonal conflict because
Hmm.
this is a microcosm of national politics on a smaller scale.
Hmm.
And it even has the same runnings of powerful politicians versus less powerful politicians. It has all of the same runnings that you would find in a large political arena. And so ultimately, almost everybody's always trying to poison the well from people that they don't like in order to jockey for position, or because it's possible that the person that they're trying to poison the well against has some sort of information on them and they're
Hmm.
concerned that they might let it leak on a larger channel. There's a million different reasons why you should essentially almost never trust anything anybody says about anybody in the online space. It's almost always bullshit. It's almost always lies. It's almost always misrepresented and mischaracterized. Almost always. Which is why just engaging in interpersonal conflict itself with other streamers is generally not a good idea. If you're going to do a stream about another streamer, you should point out the stupidity, this and that, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. But what you shouldn't do is ever become invasive and make it interpersonal because
Right.
then what ends up happening is a drag out, elongated fight where people will do insane things and go to
Yeah.
insane lengths in order to get one up on you or whatever. It's always bad. Streamers destroy each other constantly over this exact thing.
I noticed that, like the drama, and it's always like I'm gonna leak DMs, or this person went to this person's place, or like just a lot of random stuff. And I'm always like, why is nobody just getting to the point and talking about whatever issues they want to talk about? I
Because
mean, they're
interpersonal conflict is fun. And so when people are embroiled occasionally in interpersonal conflict, it may bring them views. In order to capture that again, you have to try to understand.
Mhm.
Most people never have anything interesting to say, and they never have any type of show which is interesting to watch. And so, kind of the lowest common denominator is the politics of personal destruction and interpersonal conflict. That's an easy way for you to seem like you're interesting, even if you're not. But all of those channels have a shelf life, and it's a
Mhm.
very fast shelf life, right? Running interpersonal conflict, drama streams, things like that. You can bring in a huge amount of viewers very quickly, but you ultimately end up destroying yourself.
Yeah. I find that the like when people start tapping into people's personal lives, stuff that's not on stream, stuff that's not said out, publicly, I feel like that should always be off the limits. It to me, it's not fair, it's not right, and especially when they go digging. I know you're familiar with that, but I don't think that that's like, it doesn't belong here. If you're gonna attack somebody, attack the argument, attack what they're doing on stream, attack those things, but, kind of backdooring it and going into the personal life, like, now you're bringing up stuff that doesn't belong here, especially in this industry and with YouTube, and especially in debate, it's like, what does that have to do with an argument? And a lot of them try to go into the hypocrisy concepts, and, oh, you've got a channel that does this, but then you're living like that. And it's like, at the end of the day, does it matter? I mean, I think you've spoken to hypocrisy before. Like, you have a pretty good concept of it, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, an
um,
argument from hypocrisy is fallacious on its face. So it wouldn't matter if, for instance, if I tell you not to smoke, am I being a hypocrite?
because you're a smoker. So
Hmm.
essentially, I'd say that's hypocritical, yeah, but
Is it?
I know you have a good argument for it, that's why I don't wanna say it.
I don't think well, but the thing is it? What about if I tell a 3-year-old not to smoke? Am I
Right.
being a hypocrite then?
Yeah, and I always look at it like, if a parent is smoking, and then they tell their child, "Hey, like, smoking is bad for you, look at me, like, I'm a prime example of it, so please don't smoke, like, don't smoke." Does that make you necessarily hypocritical, or does that make you an experienced person giving off the, like, "This
Right.
is bad?" Are you
But you have
stating
to
a fact?
understand there's a great study I can send you. Um, It was an elongated form study where they dove into why it is in the political arena hypocrisy is used so much. And the reason is because people associate it with criminality. They associate it with criminality, low character, things like this. Um, Even though hypocrisy itself isn't even particularly bad, right? Like an example of this might be, you sit down and you go, "Hey, look, I know vegetables are good to eat, right? But I'm not going to eat them anyway,
Mhm.
right? But you should eat your vegetables because they are good for you." Would anybody even give a like? Nobody would care, right? They wouldn't give a even if that would be a perception of hypocrisy. Nobody would care because ultimately, the point of you utilizing those arguments, which are non-arguments, they're fallacious for a reason. Is it's the politics of personal destruction. It ultimately has nothing to do with what it is that you're saying. You could yourself be a serial killer out advocating against serial murder being immoral. And you would be correct, and your argument would need to be tangled with, even if you yourself were doing the thing which was in opposition to the thing you espoused. That's why it's fallacious.
Mhm. So then, I guess, is hypocrisy maybe more of the injustice for the person being told not to do something as the person who's telling them is clearly going against that? Would you view it more of like they
It's not,
just feel
yeah, but I mean, that has nothing to do with justice itself. So
Mhm,
saying that you shouldn't do thing bad, but I do thing bad, you can
mhm,
point over and say, well, you're a hypocrite, perhaps. But how does that actually contend with whether or not you should be doing bad thing or not? That's the question.
right. So
And
the
that's
bad thing is
why,
still bad.
yeah, the bad thing is still bad. So that's why an appeal to hypocrisy is fallacious because it doesn't
Mhm,
actually get to the heart of what it is that a person is saying. Even if they're guilty of the same thing that they're out preaching against, it doesn't mean that they're wrong about what they're preaching against, right?
mhm,
So this attack, it's kind of studiously set up to associate people with criminality and things like this, as that's how people generally perceive it.
or to, like, discredit, like
Yeah,
this,
but why does it discredit? It discredits
uh,
because people associate it
with
with negative things like criminality, things
I
like
see.
this. So
So then why is hypocrisy even a thing? Like, why does it even exist? What does it exist for?
because most people can't actually contend with argumentation or worldviews. And
Mhm,
so what they tend to do instead is try to point out why it's okay that they're doing X bad thing because you're doing this other X bad thing, which goes against the worldview that you're espousing. That's why. Because most people don't understand argumentation at all. They have no
mhm,
idea that that's even fallacious to do. They have no clue. So what they do is they just kind of move into because this works in a general sense, right? So it's
mhm,
politically effective. It's a weak argument, but it can be politically effective to point out that a person is being hypocritical in something that they're doing. Because most people are kind of low IQ, stupid, right? And so they just go, "Yeah, that's right. So that means I should be able to bang because you do bad thing." So I mean, that's why they do it.
Okay, alright, so then if somebody like the worst person in the world, right? They
Mhm.
they hurt people left and right, and they're person altogether, comes and says, "Don't do bad thing, do good things, XYZ," like, at what point does he carry that credibility to give that information or give that, I guess, prescription, would
Why
you
does his
say?
credibility? I mean, when you're talking about credibility, um, why I don't understand how it hurts a person's argument, other than you would just prefer a different person who wasn't him made the argument. That's the problem, right?
Mhm. Well, I
So
would
like let's pretend, let's do a thought exercise, right?
okay. Ooh.
Let us assume for a second that a man was standing on his porch and he had a box full of puppies and he was pulling them out one at a time, drowning them. Okay. And he went over and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm drowning puppies." And you said, "That's immoral." And he said, "Yes, it is immoral. You shouldn't do that." So this guy, he's clearly being a hypocrite, right?
Mhm.
But what is he saying that's wrong?
He's not saying anything
not
wrong,
saying anything wrong.
but it also makes me question if he tells me anything
Yeah,
else.
but that's why the appeals to hypocrisy are used, is
Mhm.
specifically to damage their credibility,
Mhm.
but it doesn't actually damage their argument. That's why it's fallacious.
Ah. So you mentioned morality, like that it was immoral. Another thing I've always heard you kind of speak to is kind of a moral argument or try to make a claim of, oh, well, that's immoral, right? And then the other person can essentially say, so I'm an immoral person or I have no morals. Do you know what I'm talking about? I've heard you kind of speak to this before. Like somebody could just make instead of actually making an argument, they could just say, well, I'm immoral. I have no morals, whatever.
Right. Yeah, I'm a
And
degenerate, have no morals.
right. So could you essentially use that like that response in almost anything then?
No, because if a person tells you that they have no basis for their epistemic worldview for morality, then they can't ever tell you to do anything. They can make no ought claims. So telling you ought to do something when they claim that their value judgment is zero,
Mhm.
um, that's not only fallacious, it's actually illogical. It's illogical to tell somebody all morality is based on my preferences, but you're doing something immoral based on my preference. If you do that, then the person can just counter with, but it's my preference to do that. And isn't my preference equal to yours? Their counter will be, no, my preference is the best preference. And then your counter is, no, my preference is the best preference, et cetera, so on and so forth. So it's essentially a stalemate. Nobody who says that they have preferential based morality can ever tell somebody else that their preferential based morality is incorrect. You can't do it.
So where do you establish morality then in an argument, or do you not? Do you stay away from it?
Well, there's lots of different ways that you can try to ground epistemology. Some people do it through consequence. They like to see different consequences in the world, and they think that that's a good starting axiom. Some people use the axiom of God. Some people use the axiom of duties, or what's called threshold deontology, which is a mixture of the two, where you utilize duties for morals until you get to an absurd duty, and then you move over to consequentialism. That would be threshold deontology. So there's lots of different ways to establish moral grounding, but generally, absent God, it's just going to be axiomatic, meaning this is a reasonable starting point because most of us agree it's a reasonable starting point.
So we could make the claim that morals come from God, right? Like it comes from like our religious standpoint where our morals are developed from.
I mean, I would argue that essentially everybody's morals in the West are influenced from Christianity. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. That's what I always felt that way. I think Ashley and I kind of made the argument with somebody else. I think it was Dave actually in the chat about morality. Like we argued the idea like no, like you it comes from that religious base. Like you don't just wake up one day and you're like, "Oh, I have this whole new brand of morality," and where it comes from, like it all had to stem from somewhere, and it starts with that community, but where did that community get their morals from? And and it just cracks all the way down. So, but yeah, so with actually onto the religion, I was very interested because you've kind of come out, especially a lot lately, on your journey into, is it Orthodoxy?
Yeah, I'm an Orthodox Christian, correct.
Okay, and what is that compared to, like, because 'cause I'm Catholic, so I don't know there's
So before there was a Catholic schism, there was Orthodoxy.
okay.
So
And what is
Orthodoxy and Catholicism. Hang on, sorry,
bless you.
thought I had to sneeze. Anyway, Orthodoxy and Catholicism, that was the first great schism. So there was one whole church, the Orthodox Catholic Church, and that split between Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy. One took over the East, one took over the West.
And how, like, what would be the differentiator between, like,
The Pope,
Catholicism
an
and
easy one is the Pope.
does Orthodoxy not have a
No.
pope? So what is there some kind of, I don't know, like, tier of people
Yeah,
or
there's a hierarchy. There's bishops, metropolitans. Yeah.
oh. And then what does that look like flowing down into the church then?
I mean, it flows just like essentially like the Roman Catholic hierarchy does, absent a
Mhm.
pope.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the only okay. And then, uh
Well, the Pope has what's called infallibility, right? And so the
mhm,
Orthodox would contend that no bishop is infallible, and that would include whatever you consider this primary bishop of your religion to be the Pope. He's still
mhm.
going to be fallible. So that's what we would contend.
Oh. So, like, how does the community as a whole make decisions, or I guess all of the bishops come together and
Well, I
or
mean, they've done it through if I mean, depends on the scale of the decision.
mhm,
Most of it's pretty localized, but I mean, they have councils for scales. Yeah. I mean, lots and lots of ecumenical councils have happened, which is so that's to scale for larger decisions, things like this. But it's one whole church and one whole church body. And so, yeah, there is a hierarchy, but it does not end with one man. Not one bishop has more power than another bishop.
huh, I like that. So, okay, what brought you to kind of going down to this journey? Because I think this has all been more recent, right?
Not really. I mean, I was a catechumen for roughly 3 years. So
Okay.
that's a person who is essentially they inquire into the church, and then you ask to be formally accepted, and they put you through what's called catechesis, where they're essentially teaching you how to participate correctly inside of the religion.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I did that for 3 years before I was baptized into the church. So think of it like Christian training 101.
I like it. Well, like, I mean, I did my confirmation last year. I kind of missed that train as a teenager, so I did it as an adult with my dad, and
Much faster process.
much faster. It was like less than a year. It was a little easier on that. But I think, essentially we like I did Sunday school growing up, you go into, communion and then you do, or you have your baptism before that, but, like, all of these things, essentially, you should already be doing to where when you become I think it's 13, you do your confirmation, but ideally, you've had all of those years prior of, Sunday school or something to that nature, um so yeah, it's, as an adult, kind of quicking up the pace, essentially, I I guess it works. It works, but that was a tough decision I had to make because it was already a rough year for me to begin with my divorce and all of these things, and then it came down to, I don't have a lot of time to give, but it was like, you either do it now or you're never gonna do it. So I just piled on a very heavy year. I'm glad it's not this year, though. So what kind of like pushed you into doing all of this? Were you already, I mean, you said 3 years you were already doing that. Were you always part of that church prior to that or
No, I was a non-denominational Christian. So what got me on the path was studying church history and understanding that so I mean, it's kind of a longer story, but essentially, as you research the roots of communism, feminism, things like this, you realize that most things in life are spiritual warfare.
Mhm.
And Protestantism essentially brought us feminism. And Protestants know this and have tried to now correct for it, but they really can't. So, I mean, essentially, if they're honest, and Protestants who know church history, they know that feminism basically only took root because Protestantism allowed it to.
Uh,
So as you get into the roots of it and you start going back and trying to understand church history, you start to realize, well, wait, I really had a lot of this wrong.
So what did they do that prompted feminism? This is new to me.
Um, well, so it's these bad doctrines of sola scriptura, essentially, and sola fide and the rest of the solas. So what these are absenting you from a hierarchical church body or church authority, and instead determining that the Bible itself is the highest authority, and you, as the interpreter, can interpret the Bible correctly because you're filled with the Holy Spirit. And so when you're filled with the Holy Spirit, you can make the correct interpretations. And what's happened as a cause of that is that tons of sects and cults have popped up all over the West, which have basically fed bad doctrine, and they have become inclusive towards ideas that were never adopted by the church and were never canonical. And once you do that, you essentially can establish whatever dogma you want, and
Hmm.
this would include egalitarian dogma, non-submission for women inside marriages, all sorts of bizarre shit that has no place in Christianity.
Tell me how you really feel. I love listening to you on that kind of stuff. So, okay, so then why did you choose Orthodoxy versus, per se Catholicism or something else?
Better food, and the hats aren't as stupid.
Fair enough. Oh my goodness. You have like obviously you've been accepted into the church. Is there like another goal or something else to reach for within that?
No, the rest
No.
of my life is just focused on theosis. So that's something which is a kind of a Catholic ideal as well, but
Mhm.
it's trying to achieve some sort of semblance of a Christ-like nature, which I am very, very, very far away from.
Yeah, we all are. We all are, aren't we? That's interesting. I wasn't familiar with like the Orthodoxy or that it was even a thing. I just always thought there was like Catholic, Jewish, and just the non-denominational, like Protestant baptism, things like that. But never heard of Orthodoxy, so that's a new one for me. But
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I mean, the Catholic Church doesn't like to talk about Orthodoxy. It's not their favorite.
really. So it was split off from that, though, right?
Yeah,
So,
Catholicism split off from the Orthodox Church.
but then even the Catholics split up with the what Luther was it Lutheran?
Martin
Did
Luther,
they?
yeah,
Yeah.
he started the Protestant Reformation. That's correct.
Oh, so that would be the Protestants you're talking about with the feminism wave and all of that.
Yeah, that why there's a direct causal link between the two. Martin
Mhm,
Luther himself and kind of what he taught as a Protestant branch didn't allow any of that.
mhm,
But because they don't have a single whole church body, they can't really create good referendums against these things from the
mm,
interpretation of the church. Having a whole body, a whole church body, gives you significant cultural power to push back against kind of these anti-Christian methodologies, which in the West, what's happened is they bastardized the smaller churches into basically what would be called right now think, right? So they demonize all sorts of bizarre social taboos, which have nothing to do with Christianity at all. For instance,
mhm.
you might have heard Christians say, "Oh, you're not allowed to drink." Well, how the fuck do you ever come up with that? Christ turned water into
Water into
wine
wine.
in order to assist people with a celebration. It was a celebration, so they were
Mhm,
clearly going to be drinking it to celebrate, right?
mhm. Well,
But what
monks made beer, didn't
well,
they?
yeah, the church, the Catholic Church especially, all over Europe for about 700 years, sold most of the wine to the Europeans. They sold most of
Really?
it to taverns and to alehouses and things like this for hundreds of years. They were the primary wine makers of Europe. So it's
Really?
like, yeah, 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 not a joke.
I never knew that. Oh my goodness. Is there anything like within religion that you maybe don't like or something that you're like, "Ah, man, I gotta do that," or I don't know, it's just a hard one to come across?
There's all sorts of so I'm fairly stoic in my own personal life. I
Mhm,
don't show very much emotion usually.
mhm.
And I think sometimes that can be off-putting for people
Oh,
when you have, kind of like group prayer meets and things like this. I participate, but it's harder for me to kind of like push out emotion. You know what I mean?
get with the
So
spirit.
yeah, so that can be somewhat off-putting, I think, for people. But I mean, other than that, I enjoy the rigorism and I enjoy the kind of routine behind it and the understanding that affirmation is the primary thing which assists faith. So the more you affirm something is true through habit, the more it becomes true in your head as faith, and the more
Mhm.
you have faith in it. And the point of Christianity is faith, ultimately.
Yeah. Hmm. Fair enough. So I wanted to get into kind of actually I did have one quick question. Where did the Coomer songs come from?
Hmm.
Like what got into you to make those?
So, so I always thought that the principle behind my show would be entertainment.
Mhm.
And that was the primary goal, was entertainment. I thought we could make better entertainment than what you could find on cable TV or any of the shit movies which are out and this type of thing. So the goal is, how do we make this preferable to watch than Netflix? How do we make this preferable to watch than these other modes of entertainment?
Mhm.
Well, actually, it was quite easy because essentially all forms of mass media now are indoctrinated with what I would refer to as the message. So, any deference from the message, you can still do things which are really funny and
Mhm.
that people enjoy a ton and that people get into and that they're having a good time with. And you can provide the social interaction at the same time. So,
Yeah.
you can make it like a movie theater where all the audience kind of knows each other and they're all in there talking about the movie in real time while the movie is playing.
Yeah.
And so that opens this wide opportunity for you to put on good entertaining content for people. And so I always thought that we could just make better what you could watch.
Yeah.
And so that's what we started to do. But I also thought that music as part of a show is kind of necessary. If you watch movies or TV shows, things like this, you can get highs and emotional lows and things like this. The music really assists with that.
Mhm.
If you go, for instance, if you were to take all of the music out of the Lord of the Rings, the original movie, and watch it, not
Mhm.
even close to the same
Mm-mm.
experience.
No.
And it's because the music is designed to trigger emotion.
Mhm.
So once we realized that was the case, I would actually sing and play guitar and make my own songs and this type of thing. But with AI technology, we were able to start creating our own music, which I think is some of it's way better than anything that's out
Yeah.
now, right? Some of it's great. And so, the kind of the thematics behind it for the years, I've been making fun of Coomers for the past year. So
Mhm.
we started a genre called Coom Tunes, where we're just basically clowning on the Coomers of
And
the internet.
they're
Um,
great.
yeah, they're great. Yeah, but the themes will change. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. Do you play guitar?
I do play guitar. Yeah.
Oh, how long have you been playing for?
Well, the problem is it's like I play on and off.
Mhm.
So I haven't really been playing for about a decade, you know what I mean? I just kind of with it here and there, but I played pretty hard for years. So I started when I was around 16.
Mhm. What
So
attracted you to the guitar?
well, my brother he brought one home because a guy owed him some money for some weed. And so he brought a guitar home and said if I gave him the cash that the guy owed him, which was like $10 or something, he'd give me the guitar. So I did. That's the whole story.
And now we have Coomer songs.
Yeah, now you have Coomer songs. That's right.
It's so perfect. Oh my god. All right. So, actually I'm kind of mad at your chat now. Not mad at your chat, but it used to be really fun coming in your chat and interacting with you. And now like I go in and there's like so many people and it just moves so fast that I'm like, "Ooh, no. I can't even read it."
Yeah, well, I mean, now people have to really put in chats which stand out,
Mhm.
or I can't keep up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or super chats, but even those now, the super chats flow so quickly that I can only address them for maybe a minute, and then I have to move on to the next super chat. So
Yeah.
that kind of comes with growing pains, and I was kind of whining a bit about this last night on a Speakeasy stream.
Mhm.
That And the only kind of downside was that there was so many kind of good diehard Crucible loyalists who've been with us since the beginning, who kind of get lost in the sea of voices now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not like upset about that, and they're not upset about it, but it's something new to learn how to deal with, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, like I actually have not engaged with my chat all night, with exception to a few small ones, but it's only because I'm very focused and I'm very into the conversation and I feel like I'm neglecting them. But usually I'm very into the chat. I'm very engaging because these are the people that make you who you are at the end of the day. Like the chat always wins. That's my number one rule. But if it's flowing too fast, like as if I were a viewer, of somebody else's show and the chat's just flowing too fast, to me, like that's where all the fun's at. That's where all the engagement is happening. That's where, everybody has a good time. So it's kind of too, it's a double-edged sword for it. I do actually want to read a couple super chats that came in, and then we'll move on to the next little tidbit. So Clover Tech coming in with the $5. Thank you for the Bratty Tomato Fund. She appreciates it. Here from the Crucible. Thank you for hosting Andrew, even though he's not ripped, rich, or rare. No,
That's
but
fair.
I will say, Andrew, I do appreciate your intelligence. I always enjoy listening to you, especially in debates. I always appreciate a smart man. That to me it speaks more volumes than anything. So cheers to you for that one because you've done very well. And Great Pill Podcast coming in with the $2. Salute to the chat and the panel. Thank you so much, Great Pill. Okay, and then OPC Don coming in with the $5 as well. Can Andrew comment on his recent remarks that he made about Grace Thorpe on the Whatever podcast? Please put this towards the Bratty Tomato Fund.
What comments?
I don't know. Remarks that he made about Grace Thorpe. I wouldn't imagine you talking about Grace Thorpe on Whatever podcast.
I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Not only that, but the one reference that I made one time when I was in an argument with a person happened, I think, a couple of months back,
Mhm.
and the Thorpe squashed whatever issues they had with me far after that. So who gives a shit?
Yeah. And Rude Mud, I see your chat for $10 and I appreciate it, but to me that kind of question it seems a little disrespectful. So I'm going to negate it for now, but I do
Put it up.
appreciate it. Okay. Would someone claiming to be religious while having multiple baby moms and children they abandoned be hypocritical?
I abandoned children.
I'm guessing that's he's referring to you, but I don't know.
I was not aware that I ever abandoned children. I also was not aware that altruism or being a stepfather was a non-Christian principle. Can you explain how that's a non-Christian principle? I'd actually like to know the answer to that question.
You're speaking to that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know. But I would assume that it would be a more Christian style thing, right?
I mean, I'd like to know the answer.
You're not talking to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, but what'll happen is, just so you know, here's how this will go from here. They'll send in
Okay,
another super chat, but they're not going to answer that question. Just so you know,
fair enough.
it's a
Fair
question
enough.
I asked, but they're not going to answer that question.
Oh. Yes, I think that especially in the manosphere, step parents and single moms seem to take or I'll specifically say stepfathers and single moms seem to take the biggest beating of them all, as far as like they're like the bottom of the totem pole according to everybody in this space. Yet nobody like recognizes that it would like there's a human part behind it. It's not just, "Oh, you're just this," or "You're just that," or "You're a simp for doing this," or whatever. It's quite interesting. I feel like I always take the verbal beatings on being a single mom, so, um
Well, I mean, but this is the thing, right? Is that um, they're mostly right. It's probably not a great idea to date or get
it's not
married to
idea.
a
Oh, it's
single
not.
mom. It's not a good idea.
Mhm. I'll never negate that. I've never said like you're wrong, but what I do say is like it's okay to say this is not the most ideal situation for a 25-year-old man. However, that doesn't like dehumanize me as a person or as a mom or as even being dateable in any concept, because there's all sorts of other people in situations similar to mine, or there's all sorts of different people who maybe they don't want kids and they don't mind me having kids. There's somebody out there for everybody. And I feel like you can't just make a blanket statement negating everybody, because if that was the case, then everybody would have some kind of blanket statement over top their heads for everything, and it wouldn't matter.
Well, I mean, exceptions are what make the rule true.
Exceptions are what make the rule true. How do you mean?
Hmm. So, I mean, for instance, let's take the narrative that like Asians are bad drivers, right?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, all Asians are not bad drivers, right? If all Asians were bad drivers, then you wouldn't say, that there wouldn't be a stereotype. It would just be a fact. The reason the stereotype exists is because at least some of them have to be good drivers. Otherwise, it wouldn't be stereotypical. It would just be a fact.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So there would have to be some good single moms out there in order for there to be some non-dateable ones out there,
Yeah.
because
Well, I
there's
mean,
the
essentially,
exception.
essentially, the stereotype can't exist unless there was at least some who were decent.
Yeah. Okay. I see where you're
Which
going
it's a
with
bold claim anyway. To women can become single moms for all sorts of reasons which are outside of their purview. For instance, their husbands can die.
that. Hmm.
You know what I mean? Now you're a
Yeah.
single mom.
It
what
happens.
they're what they're trying to push at, I think what they're trying to get at, which is a good point, is women who choose that life, they choose that lifestyle. They were at fault for that lifestyle. They chose
Mhm.
to dissolve their marriage, or they chose to do these types of things. That's what they're getting at, and that's correct. I completely
Mhm.
agree.
Right, and then I feel like there's even more exceptions to that route, women who are being abused or harmed, or, their children are at risk for whatever reason. I feel like there's still sits exceptions to that rule as well.
Yeah,
Um,
there's exceptions to all rules, but
yeah.
there's also general ideas of things to do or not do.
Mhm.
So I think that a general rule that dating single moms is probably a bad idea is probably a good rule, because it's generally a bad idea. That having stepchildren, generally it's a bad idea,
Mhm.
because it is generally a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, especially for, like, a young 25-year-old man that's, like, coming, just getting started and then ends up with whatever. I don't know. I feel like there's certain situations that it definitely is applicable, and then there's others where it's like, maybe, maybe not. But Grid One Motorsports coming in with the $20. Andrew, can you get into how you have made it a personal mission to help smaller creators? Oh my God, I can't read. How you do that and how you manage to continue doing it, and despite what seems like many backbiters taking advantage of your kindness.
So, um, again, this is not something I get into all that often, because I don't. It's not like something that I hang my hat on. It's just it's a policy of the Crucible that I directed my team a long time ago to begin to build infrastructure for the purposes of networking. And so we have a giant Discord, and we have this giant channel, and we have giant infrastructure all over the place, including on Twitter, Instagram, all these other places. And one of the things that we did was make sure that that infrastructure was available to creators who were just starting out, so that they could network, get their names out there, and peel off Crucible viewership to their own channels. And we don't charge anything for that. We never have. We just have the infrastructure available so that people can utilize it, and it's completely free. And my thought process behind this is that it was really quite a difficult road for me, starting out as a content creator online. It was not something that I ever aimed to do. It just kind of happened. But not having that infrastructure was very difficult. And so I wanted to make it easier for other people who had at least some kind of similar beliefs, but even people who don't, I let them
Mhm.
advertise as well. Um, and I'll also, obviously, I send huge audiences over to, kind of tiny channels to help get them kind of moving in the right direction, at least get them exposed to a lot of eyeballs. and this type of thing, when generally the general rule of thumb is to do it the opposite way, send them over to larger creators in hopes those larger creators will then do the same for you, right?
Mhm.
But I do it the opposite way. And my thought process behind it is that I think it's a good idea to just kind of lessen the load, so that people don't have to have like kind of the nightmare scenario I did where I was working 60 hours a week, many weeks, and then also, running a show that was extremely difficult to do, and there just really wasn't any help for us at all. We just had to build the thing from scratch.
Isn't that the best way though to build up from scratch and like knowing that you can look back and say, I built this, I did this, you know?
No, no, I would have preferred like 15 shortcuts. That would have been awesome. Like, I would have preferred to have networking shortcuts, and I would have preferred to have people introduce me around the space. I would have preferred to have had people rating the channel. I would have preferred all sorts of other things that would have made my life a million times better. And that's
Mhm.
why that infrastructure is there. And I also, and you probably know this, many creators reach out to me, and I assist them with, with equipment. I assist them with all kinds of things because I want to see people succeed.
Yeah. Department of Numismatics coming in with the $20. What's truly non-Christians is being a citizen of Australia who enjoys pineapple pizza. So say, Mr. Belay, huzzah. Thank you. I think I kind of got it easy in a sense because I spent my first year going on everybody else's channels, and I did all of my networking without realizing I was networking. So, and I was making then, halfway into it, I started making little videos, making fun of the Manosphere and little things like that. And it wasn't like a big hit or anything, but it was just fun. And it was just something to do on the side. But I spent my time going on everybody else's channels. So when I had my first live and I started going from there, like I feel like I already had the build up behind it. So I wasn't starting with just one viewer. I was starting with 20 or 30 and going forward, and it just keeps building up every round. And to me, like I already did the hard stuff, the networking stuff. So it's not much to really reach out to one person to be able to say, I want to get a hold of that person, So, and I think that that's kind of the basis of my channel too, is I found that to be a natural niche per se that I have, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I'm good at networking. This is what I do." And so now it's come to introducing different content creators to the viewers and introducing different viewers to different content, like all over the place. So it makes it fun. So maybe that would have been the shortcut is to just start beaming up on other people's channels first. So speaking of Manosphere, what are your thoughts on that whole community and that whole array of people and what they have going on?
Um, the problem is that the whole thing is fractured into different
Mhm.
sects, just like all of these spheres are.
Mhm.
The manosphere broadly is trying to capture this conceptualization that men are kind of getting a bad rap. They have additional duties and responsibilities that women don't have, um, but to have no additional privileges due to that. Now, some of them take advantage of this kind of, I don't know what you would call it, kind of societal pushback, perhaps, that's going on. And they utilize it for pickup artistry or things like this, how you can better yourself and better your role so that you can have sex with more women, right? So that's
Mhm.
kind of the degenerate arm of the manosphere. And then you have the kind of commentary content creators who utilize non-religious descriptive claims for the distinctions between men and women. And those people can give pretty useful data, but they don't really give any prescriptions. And then you
Mhm.
move to the third tier. The third tier is kind of a combination of all of these things. So the third tier creator is saying, not only are we going to kind of show you how to better yourself so that you can find a wife, if that's what you're choosing to do, but also how you can increase your wealth and your health. And then on top of that, um, here's some prescriptions for how to live your life in a kind of good way, right?
Mhm.
So the reason that that's so popular is because female promiscuity is through the roof. And as you may know, the kind of common argument back and forth is that women generally don't care very much about male promiscuity, and men tend to care an awful lot about female promiscuity. So men don't want women who have been penetrated by many men,
Mhm.
whereas women don't seem to care so much about how many women a man's penetrated. So this is why there's a kind of a distinction in how the two viewpoints are from their nature, right? Their very nature, their ontology is showing a distinction from how they view the world. And so what the Manosphere does is it's capturing that idea and it's pushing it out into the greater ethos that we can reform society around these kinds of true principles, though they don't actually tell you how to reform society around those principles, just that those principles exist.
And, like, are there little pieces that you take from it that you could be agreeable to?
I agree with most red pill descriptors.
Okay. And how does that, because you kind of I think you've debated the Christ pill, right? Like, or like for the Christ pill concept. I think that's kind of a new one that's entered the arena.
They just call Christians who don't believe in the kind of degenerate arm of the red pillars, Christ pillars,
Okay.
right?
So the differentiator would be kind of like the pickup artistry or how to bang as many chicks as possible or,
Or just
stuff like that.
whatever the degenerate arm is.
Right.
There could be a degenerate arm that just does commentary. There could be a degenerate arm that does teaching. You have to remember there's
Mhm.
a lot of money to be made inside of that sphere by those guys
Mhm.
because many of them make courses and things like this, which they then go on to sell value for value, attempting to take kind of guys who are at the lower echelons of female preference and trying to boost them up so that they reach higher tiers so that they can capture the type of woman that they want ultimately.
Mhm.
And men, especially young men, will pay big bucks in order to do that. And so there's a lot of money which flows in that sphere. However, many of the principles which are taught, now we're getting into prescription, I consider to be highly degenerate. And so
Mhm.
I debate against those things often.
If you could, like, snap your fingers and reform the red pill, blue pill, like, all of that stuff and, perfect it, what would it look like to you?
It would be a coalition men's rights advocacy group, which
Mhm.
funded millions of dollars towards Capitol Hill lobbyists and added bills onto essentially what I would do is piggyback them on other crisis bills. So,
Mhm.
what I would do is I would piggyback marriage reform on a crisis bill. Crisis bill being like, oh, we got to fund the government. We're out of time, right? We have to fund the government with $20 billion, or Social Security is going to become bankrupt, so we have to fund it. And okay, that's great, but if you want to pass that bill, we're going to attach this lobbying bill onto it
Mhm.
that adds some kind of incremental marriage reform onto it. That way it has to get passed. But in order to do that, you have to bribe, even though they don't call it bribing, they call it lobbying. You have to bribe with a lot of money. And that's going to require a corporate sponsorship. It's very difficult to do because most corporations appeal to women.
Yeah.
So,
Power of the purse.
correct. So you actually have to do it from a grassroots centered effort, which makes it even tougher. But it can be done, but it can only be done essentially by people who have infrastructure in place. That would be the church. There's
Mhm.
nobody else who can really piggyback that kind of infrastructure. So what ends up happening instead is people try to do these little kind of grassroots movements and they putter out very quickly because they don't have the infrastructure in place to reach these major lobbyists in Capitol Hill. So that's what I would want to see people working towards.
So it would be marriage then that you would wanna see, reformed per se,
I would
uh,
say that
or at least the crux
I'd,
like the go ahead.
yeah, I would say pornography and marriage laws would be a really good start
Mhm.
for for pushing in the right direction. I would say that society which will allow an 18-year-old girl to take her clothes off on a camera for money is a degenerate society that is in dire need of reformation, and
Mhm.
that we should be doing everything possible to move towards the goal of, at the very least, ending that type of phenomenon. At least trying to piggyback regulations incrementally, like perhaps you have to have some kind of actual card login for a pornography site, or that
Mhm.
pornography cannot just be shown in general platforms without the consent of the other person per pornographic pic, or things like this.
Mhm.
I would definitely move towards trying to do national reformations on that, but it would require hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying money going to Capitol Hill politicians, and you would need them to get sponsored. So even if we had all the infrastructure together today to make such a push, it would take years to significantly bribe the culture in DC to do it.
So almost like getting a driver's license, you get a porn license or the
Yeah,
ability to watch one.
yeah.
I mean, with that, essentially, wouldn't you run into because we have cell phones and it's just so easy to Cash App or,
There's
send,
whole countries that have no
you know
pornography on their internets. None.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
How
you
did
can restrict it completely if you want to. You have to remember that the internet of the United States is essentially controlled by one company, and that's Google.
Mhm.
And so if laws are passed which tell Google you're not allowed to show A, B, or C, Google can hit a switch and it all goes away like that.
Really?
Yeah. For instance, let's say you Google, some pornographic phrase or something. Um, Google can actually make it so that when you Google that phrase, no results turn up for any pornographic images unless they're buried 50,000 pages back, so you can never find them. Google has the power to do that, and you have the power to legislatively make them do that.
Really? So, do you feel like because we have all of our Bill of Rights and all of that, and freedom of this and freedom of that, do you think that that is impeding upon that, or where can we draw the line at?
No, I don't think that pornography is speech.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it is.
or even going into
I don't think that pornography is expression. I don't think it's speech.
mhm,
I don't think that having laws based around limiting access to pornography is in any way violating anybody's perceived rights. I don't think that rights exist anything as anything outside of a concept anyway.
mhm,
Um, and constantly the threshold for what is speech has changed. Why can't we change it the way that we want it? The left
mhm,
will change your right to speech in a second. They'll say you
mhm,
can't say nasty, dirty words, against minorities or
yeah,
women. They'll say that you can't, use bullying speech. They'll say all of these different things, and they'll limit your speech in a heartbeat. For some reason, though, the right wing has decided that they're going to be free speech advocates for unfettered speech, and that's insane because the left is willing to use political power where we are not, and we should be using political power. So we should be passing our agenda the same way they do, utilizing political authority.
yeah, that makes sense. So even more so, like cigarettes, alcohol, even cannabis. Now, you have to have a driver's license, obviously, to get alcohol or cigarettes. You have to be of a certain age, so on and so forth, because we're treating it as if it needs to be monitored, managed, something to that degree. So you're saying it's either wiping it completely or coming down with some type of like certified structure to making it happen in order to push that forward. That makes sense. And then what was the other one? Oh, so marriage reformation. What are your thoughts on that? Oh, and we did get a response from our buddy. It sounds like he said he wasn't taking a dig at you. He was merely asking a question regarding someone else for his own clarification.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, like I said, none of them will ever answer that question, right? So anyway, so back to this. What I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted
Sorry.
was that I would make access to marriage actually more difficult. So access to marriage I'd make more difficult before I even put divorce laws in place.
Hmm.
So I would say that you would need to have a year at least in an application to a marriage license. And I would try to move to have marriage itself be considered only sacramental and have the state get out of it altogether.
Yeah, I mean, even Catholicism kind of has something because my ex-husband and I, we got married, Catholic. We did like a whole pre-Cana thing and a whole situation you have to go through.
Yeah, you had a sacramental marriage.
Yeah, we
Did
did.
they grant you a divorce?
I have to put in the annulment, but I know it falls under the I know it falls under the
Oh,
ability
it's gonna
to.
get annulled, so you were never married?
I guess so. If
Yeah.
if if I so choose to get married again, I would need that, but I have no reason to push that button right now, so but the church will, like, forgive it for me, and allow that to happen, but that's only if I feel the need to marry again, and I'm not feeling that, so for the sake of, like, my kids, I think I'd rather have it just stay in place as is. I feel like that would be like, why go through that whole long process just to have it kinda I don't know. I don't know. It's debatable, but, with the state getting out of marriage, like, what is the reasoning behind I mean, I have a feeling I know why, but, like, what would be the reasoning why the state needs to get out of it for you?
Well, they have no business being in it to begin with. So the
Mhm,
state itself is acting as an enforcement arm to a contract that neither party is actually agreeing to. I don't believe
mhm,
that either party entering into a marriage contract really understands what that means, and that they're actually doing it under duress because they feel like the benefits that come with it, they've been sold a bill of goods, and they can't get access to these benefits absent the marriage itself, which is essentially it's a compelled contract at that point.
mhm.
You're getting, aren't you? I mean, you're signing it under duress because you feel like you can't get the benefits access absent the license. There's no reason for that at all. They
Right,
don't
like
need to be
insurance and
they don't need to be involved in any of that. It's none of their affair, it's none of their concern. Marriage itself is a sacramental practice, and if it was viewed as a sacramental practice, then you would see a lot less divorce because only people would be getting married who had these sort of church communities around them, which can then give them the aid which would make their marriage work. Most people's marriages fail because they have no support whatsoever inside of the marriage. They
Mhm,
don't, it's just them. It's you and them, and maybe your parents or something like this. The marriages that seem to work the best are the heavily religious based marriages where there's active community involvement.
mhm,
Um, and that seems to really help the marriage quite a bit. I can completely understand why. It provides a safe haven for both the man and the woman. They both have friends who are interconnected in the community who can assist with different needs. Finances become an issue at some points in basically everybody's marriage, every normal person's marriage. Financials usually will become an issue at some point. Having church access and community that way can assist with that as well, and often does. The most amount of charity in the world is dispensed, well, in the United States, anyways, dispensed by Christians. So it's not uncommon to see people who are inside of the church who are active community members fall in hard times, and the church to take care of almost everything from their rent
yeah,
to I've seen churches install brand new AC conditioning systems for people, assist them with surgeries, assist them in basically every way that a person can be assisted. And so having that community support via that sacramental marriage, I think, is super important. And I think that the state just kind of willy nilly offering out these licenses, including under duress, is a really bad idea. And it's led to essentially women under this Duluth model being able to not only blame men for domestic violence, but being immediately sided with for custody and everything else in between. Seems like it's a fundamentally unfair model from the male perspective, and so more of them are checking out of marriage. And since we have contraception, since people can just have all the degenerate sex that they want, absent any of the responsibility, why wouldn't they do that? Of course, they're going to
right.
do that,
It's your cake and eating it too, all at the
right?
same time. You get
Right.
your needs fulfilled and then but you don't owe anybody anything. You're not accountable to anything. And then you just have to, you become the old cat lady. It doesn't matter because you can live your first 40 years doing whatever you want, essentially. So I feel like the way you're saying it is like because people used to rely heavily on the church, has the government tried to like pull the almost pull the neediness to them on like maybe on purpose or just it's worked out that way to where now we rely on the government to grant us our rights or abilities or take control like judges taking control of
Oh yeah,
divorce making
there's big
decisions.
money. There's big money in it. There's big money in
Mhm.
divorce. There's big money in marriage. There's big money. There's an entire industry based around marriage itself and weddings which are 20, 30, $40,000, rings which are
Mhm.
20, $30,000. People will go into debt for 20 years based on their wedding because they're
Mhm.
insane. There's entire industries around divorce and divorce attorneys. I mean, business is a booming.
Yeah.
So yeah, the state also gets paid licensing fees for these types of things, and they also get all sorts of kickbacks from insurance companies based on different habits that people may have. For instance, it's possible men live longer based on long-term longitudinal studies if they're married, and so some insurance companies. Now, this is just what I'm told. I haven't looked into this, but it would make sense if it was true do offer kickbacks to the state for how many licenses they issue to men because it makes insurance premiums in those areas go down because they assume that the men are going to live longer and have less health problems. So
What?
yeah, yep. So it's big business, right? It's big business.
So do you think maybe because like we got wrapped like I feel like every wedding I've gone to in the last 5 years has been a destination wedding, like a crazy venue. It's super expensive, whereas like mine and my husband's wedding was like at the church. And then we had like a little reception, nearby, something easy. But do you think that people are getting swept away with the idea of marriage, the portrayal, the social media that they get to post afterwards, all the beautiful pictures and who has the best wedding? Like, do you think that like the commercialized version of it is kind of like, I don't know, a tidbit of taking over? You
I think
get
I
away
think
from the
that
root.
um, there are incentives from both the man and woman side for marriage itself. So
Mhm,
the incentives I think from women are security and from men it's access to sex, right?
mhm,
That's men I mean as far as on the hierarchy of needs for men, food and sex is basically at the top of the list for most of them, right?
mhm.
Very simple creatures men are generally when it comes to their own needs.
You are so
And they
simple.
yeah, they tend to care about those. They kind of prioritize those two things above almost all other things.
Mhm.
And they'll even put up with the nagging wives and all sorts of things if they're getting good food and sex. They'll put up with a lot for good food and
You
sex. They
guys
really will.
do know, you do.
They'll put up with a huge amount of sex. So, or a huge amount of for sex and food. So,
Mhm,
I think that there's benefits to or perceived benefits to each. The problem is that there's no enforcement that people keep their word going into the marriage. So there's no guarantee that men are going to actually get access to that sex, and there's no guarantee that women are going to get access to that security. And so, since you have a contract which is easier to break than a cell phone contract, it's really easy for one of them, in this case, usually the woman, to go ahead and break the contract so that they can divide whatever assets they want and try to move on to somebody who does offer that said X security. And so, um, all trust and faith in the institution of marriage is basically destroyed.
Is it I mean, are you saying it's like the women's fault in general that all
I
of
mean,
these
they initiate most of the divorces. Yeah,
have we considered the why? Like, why they're
we have considered the
initiating.
why. So that's been a heavily detailed phenomenon. We've detailed it extensively. Most of them happen due to irreconcilable differences. Well, what does that
Mhm.
mean? Well, when you dive into it, it's usually just that their satisfaction level with their partner has lowered over time. Um, but it's not because of domestic abuse. It's not because of financial problems. Though those are on the list for why some women initiate divorce, overwhelmingly, it's just irreconcilable differences. I
Mhm.
just stopped liking him. So marriage is work, and anybody who says it isn't is a fool. And
Right.
you can have rough years in your marriage, multiple rough years.
Mhm.
But so what? That's part of that commitment vow. I think when people make the vow for better or worse, rich or poor, till death do us part, they don't mean any of that.
Yeah, I think there are some people that don't. I think, and I think it's recognizing that vow and how important it is. And I think also because you're not doing it under the guise of a church, and it's not as you're doing it at a venue, at the beach somewhere. Like, is it that meaningful if you're doing it that way and you're getting someone who did an online test to get their ability to what is it to oh, what is the word I'm looking for? To be able to marry them. What's the, like a not a priest,
No,
but,
I don't think so. I think that it's just a case of the simplest answer usually being the correct one. And so
mhm,
here's what the simple answer to this probably is for why these divorces are being initiated.
mhm,
It's because women can basically get away with it. Women also will do huge amounts of mental gymnastics in order to create justifications absent truth for why they were in the right for doing XYZ bad thing to man. They will
mhm,
do overwhelming amounts of mental gymnastics and justifications to say, well, I had to take his kids because then it increased the child support, which then actually gave them a better life. That's all mental fucking gymnastics,
yeah.
right?
No, I do agree with
That's
you there
all
for
that
sure.
those are all things that which create justifications to do horrible things to another person. And women seem to be particularly vindictive about this because I don't think that they assert logic the same way that men do. I think that they move to emotion before they move to rationality. And so I think
Mhm,
that the outcomes of allowing women to make the determination as to the rewards for them when the marriage is dissolved is the worst fucking idea we could ever imagine because most of them are not acting in a rational fashion, which is based around the actual well being of their children, but rather based around their own well being.
mhm. No, I agree with you there. I think that because of the lack of logic and or even allowing a cool down period, right? So you could stop and think about it and say, why do you need the kids X amount or why is the child support doing this? And what's like that's a lot of that's why that's a lot of stuff that even smart people can't figure out in a day. You have to sit and really think about what's the best interest of the child. And I think most parents, when they are divorcing, they forget the key factor. And it's like the best interest of the child. That's what we need to look at. It's
I
not a
don't think
me.
both parents forget it. I think the woman forgets it. And I think it's mostly the woman forgets that it's in the best interest of the children
Mhm,
to stay with the father. Um, it's almost always in their best interest for you to do that. But women prioritize self happiness over even that of their children with the false belief that if they are happy, that will somehow create like a trickle down effect. Now, if mommy's miserable, you'll be miserable. Well, that trickle down effect exists. But the if mommy's happy, you'll be happy trickle down effect does not exist. That does not happen. Mommy usually isn't happy anyway. She doesn't usually move on from whoever it was she divorced and end up with somebody who's better or end
mhm,
up with anybody at all. So it's a selfish move that's designed around personal gain and the absence of caring about anybody other than yourself. Most justifications that women provide for divorce have to do with one word: me. Me, 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 me. I wasn't getting what I wanted. I wasn't getting the thing that I needed. I wasn't getting this. I wasn't getting that. What about me? Me, 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 me. I actually rarely hear them create the external justifications. And if they did, men would be far more sympathetic to their plight. For instance, if they said, my husband was abusive towards my children, physically abusive towards my children,
mhm,
that's a complete justification for leaving your husband and should
mhm,
be a complete justification for leaving your husband. Or he was a fucking junkie drug addict. and he was not recovering, which created turmoil in our home. That's
Right.
good justification as well.
Yep.
What's not good justification is he didn't fulfill all of my emotional needs
I
anymore.
agree. I
He
agree with
wasn't
you there.
nice. He wasn't nice enough to me. He didn't make me feel good anymore.
Right.
I didn't
'Cause
get the
those are all emotions.
butterflies when I saw him anymore. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Those aren't good. Those aren't good reasons to get a divorce, especially if you have children. That's just me reasons. Me,
Yeah.
me, 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 me.
No, I 100% agree with you there. I think if you're gonna get a divorce, you better have a good reason, because if you're not gonna do the work it takes, just like you said earlier, marriages take work. And you would be at 100% a total buffoon to think like, oh, we just got married and we just be married, and that's just how it works. So I
Well, like this
100%
this
agree with you.
commenter, Royce in the house says, seen many men use religion as a means to control their wives. Yeah, that's good. Why is that bad?
I think, well, in that, okay, so that brings me to the question then, like, why are all of these, like, why are all of men, like, that are in these positions, like, why are they allowing this to happen?
They're not allowing
What,
it to happen.
or how is it getting to that point where she feels she has the power to walk away and do those things? You know what I mean?
It got to that point because rich industrialists pushed feminism and the sexual revolution so that they could double the workforce. That way they could get double the workforce and half the wages. So
Mhm.
that's why it happened. And that's why
Right.
it's still happening. And women have utilized kind of their position in the current market because everything is tailored towards them in modernity to weaponize it against men. That's what's happened.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then so would you say that, with your whole marriage reformation, like, even to get a divorce, like, what would it look like to be able to even get a divorce, if you can get a divorce?
Well, you'd have to show
Uh,
cause. You'd have to
mhm,
show legitimate cause for the divorce that actually made sense.
yeah.
You couldn't just go in and be like, I don't get butterflies anymore
I
because they
agree
might
with you.
go, oh, you don't? Well, we don't give a shit, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. You better do some work on you, I guess.
Yeah.
You should only be able to really get divorced under some specific circumstances.
Mhm.
Infidelity, non-consummation of a marriage. I could see those as being grounds.
Yeah.
Significant abuse, I would see that as being grounds. Being a junkie, I could see that as being grounds.
Mhm.
But people are not really getting divorced over those things. They're getting
Yeah.
divorced over I fell out of love and don't get
Yeah.
the butterfly effect anymore when he comes home from work. I don't feel the need when he comes home from work to immediately get on my knees and start him off anymore. I don't feel like it I don't feel this. I don't feel the lightning anymore. That's what this is now.
I agree with you there. I agree with you there. Oh my goodness. No, and I think that that's, well, part of that too, I think, is we're part of the instant gratification society
Why
now.
not, Royce? Why isn't either spouse supposed to control the other? Why is that a problem? Why is having control inside of a marriage problematic? You don't even know. You just think it is because you think it is. But like, shouldn't I have control over the finances if I'm better with finances? Shouldn't I have control over that?
Mhm.
Why shouldn't I have control over that? If the church has expectations for men which keep them in line in society under control, why is it that the church can't assist with control inside the house? There's nothing wrong with control. You only made it a dirty word because you're indoctrinated. You have to stop being stupid, bro. Take the stupid cap off and stop being indoctrinated. Stop it. What you're saying is illogical. It makes no sense. It's stupid. Of course you want control. Why wouldn't you want control? And why shouldn't one spouse, if one spouse is 10 times more responsible than the other, why shouldn't he have control? Like, what are you even talking about? It's the stupidest I ever heard in my life. Stop being a dumb fuck. Stop it. Ridiculous, these people. You never think any of this is true. You're just like, derp, but woman with vagina told me they don't want to be controlled. It's like, dude, shut up, idiot.
But even at that, you can't have 2 chefs in one kitchen, right? I mean, somebody's gotta take the lead and somebody's gotta follow, and if you have 2 people butting heads on that or trying to take control, then you're not gonna end up anywhere, or if you
You
have
have
2
one head.
people.
You have one head. You can only have one head. No ship sinks like a partnership. Okay, that's been a rule of business since people started doing business.
Mhm.
No ship sinks like a partnership. Same thing in a marriage, not a partnership. It's not,
I
and it's never going to be a partnership.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a partner when you get married, you're not going to have a successful marriage, I promise. You're going to have a miserable marriage.
Amen. And Don Juan coming in with the 4.99. He says, Andrew, been a while. Last time in your chat, you said I gave you 2 L's. Hee hee. A good book you'll like is How the Catholic Church Built Western Society. Oh, I think my dad read that one. I feel like I remember seeing that one before. And Don Juan coming in again with the $1.99. Thank you, Don Juan, for the Bratty Tomato Fund. Nothing about hats, but we have better food. Latin. And coming in again, he says to anybody wanting to know the difference between ortho and caths, y'all go to the Vatican Catholic channel where there's 13
Nope.
videos on
You go
orthodoxy.
to the Orthodox Discord. So you can learn the actual differences, not from a big hat perspective.
Fair enough. And then speaking on Vatican Catholic, Andrew, tell your boy Jay Dyer, Peter Diamond is waiting. Dyer, come out to play.
Didn't he already debate with Diamond? I think he did.
I have no idea. I've been so out of the loop lately. It's ridiculous. Uh I don't even know. Oh, and Grid Sports coming in with the $20. Thank you again. The world is based in patriarchy and shall remain so. To even think otherwise is delusional and spreading chaos. Keep cooking, Andrew. Keep cooking. You're always cooking.
Always trying.
Always cooking. You always strike my curiosity. I always feel like a curious little kitten, grasping for more information. So I'm thoroughly enjoying the one-on-one with you because, well, it's nice to actually get to ask the questions instead of just watching what you spit out to other people per se. Um, and the Federalist, I don't know, whatever that is. I think so. Coming with the $5. The husband is to his wife what Christ is to the church. Royce, stop being a simp. It's called submission. Marriage is hierarchical. Ephesians 5:22. There we go. And Don Juan coming in. I promise it won't be like 1204 sack of Constantinople.
Hang on one second.
Yeah, do your thing. People will choose what has the best argument. No, they haven't debated, but hopefully will. I'll leave that one up for Andrew when he gets back. I hope everybody here is enjoying the interview. I know I said 1 to 2 hours. When Andrew gets back, I'll see if he wants to keep going or if we can cut it here. However, it's all up to him. But I'm so curious. I feel like a curious little kitten, and he's just a very wise man, very intelligent, and you know, it's easier to trust somebody who's done all of the research and read all of the books and had all of the arguments already versus just going out and, you know, trying to find it on Facebook. So, good to that. Did you have a loose cord coming out somewhere
No,
or
the
anything?
flint ran out on my Zippo, so I'm just putting a new flint in.
That's cool. Don Juan says that they have not debated yet, but hopefully will. We are reaching the 2 hour mark. It's up to you, Andrew, if you want to continue on or if you want to drop off. I don't want to take any more of your time if you're, I know you're busy. You've got a lot going on and a lot of shows you've been on. So it's totally up to you.
Well, I allocated the time for you tonight, so whatever you want to do, it's totally up to you.
Fair enough. And the Sanity Machine coming in with the 222 shout out from the Sanity Machine channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I do just need to use a quick restroom break. I have one of two options. I can just put on a little video that'll take up a few minutes of our time and you don't have to do anything,
No, I'll
or you
just
can.
argue with the chat.
Fair enough. I figured you'd enjoy that all too much. All right. Well, chat, cheers to you. Send it.
There we go. Problem solved. Problem solved. Anyway, what do you bums want to talk about while Sarah's gone? I didn't even really put out anything for this stream, and it still got over 500 people in it. Still got over 500 people. Barely did anything. It just like came on and said, "What's up?" Andrew, some bimbo told me smoking was a sin. Yeah, some bimbo's right. Why'd you let Hennessy Wilson get that deletion? Grab the marshmallow. Someone's getting roasted. My thought, well, St. Baptist Church is the one true Baptist church, St. Baptist Church. It's in it's somewhere in Alabama, I'm sure, St. Baptist Church. Hey, Mr. E, I see you in the chat. Are you going to put up the pizza party for tomorrow or what? Would I recommend marriage today as the law stand or not? Yeah, if you have a sacramental marriage, I'd recommend it. If you have a secular state marriage, it seems like it's the stupidest thing in the world. I would never do that in a million years. Like ever. I'd never do that. Yeah, I didn't show you your belly. That's true. Or my belly. That's true. What is this music this chick has on? What is this? It's like low key porn music. Who are you, Andrew? Who are you? Visiting with St. Baptist the Third was a treat. Yeah. St. Baptist the Second and St. Baptist the Third. What a dumb prod that one was.
All right. Was it fun?
Well, no, yeah, I mean it was, but then you came back. I mean, we were
Oh,
having a good
I can
time,
leave
and
if you want.
I
I
could
could just let you take over the whole show. You just argue with the chat the rest of the night.
everything was perfect, and then you just
Sorry. See,
just
a
wrecked
woman
the
ruins it all.
wrecked the whole thing.
That's what we do. That's what we do, right? So back to the marriage concept. I had a question. Now I just lost it. Surprise, surprise. Where did it go? My whole thought process to that.
You had all that time to think about a question.
I had a question and then I
all that time to think about a question. You already up. How did you
did.
already up, Sarah?
Because I'm a girl.
Mhm.
Okay. I've got mom brain. There's like 10 million and one other things going through my head. It happens. But with marriage, though, that's what it was. The word submission. Okay.
Mhm.
Because that's kind of been turned into a dirty word in an aspect. I think between the red pill talking points and some things that get skewed along the way versus the feministic viewpoint of like, you're not going to tell me what to do. Like, where is your happy place on the word submission for a wife to her
Do what
husband?
you're told. That's my happy place.
Oh my goodness, I love it. But like with the idea of being submissive as a wife, like what kind of accountability does the man have for making the right decisions and keeping her protected and cared for the
A man
way?
has to make decisions which comport with reason. And if he's not making decisions which comport with reason, then he's going to do irrational things. That's where
Mhm,
abuse, drugs, things like this come from. Those are irrational things to do.
mhm,
So if he's acting in a way which is irrational, then that's not part of submission.
mhm,
However, it's not irrationality for him to make demands that you just don't like. That's
mhm,
not being irrational. That's you submitting. So as long as he's in compliance with rationality, you need to do what you're told. That's what hierarchical authority inside of the household is. Do what you're told.
yeah, and what leads a woman to being able to, like, trust that he's being rational when women ourselves, like, we're known as being irrational, emotional, hard to make decisions kind of thing. If we don't know what a good decision looks like, how do we know that we're, we're with
Do
somebody
you
who
usually
does.
marry men you don't trust?
No, but, like, with that, how do I guess that leads to, like, the father in context of, like, the father would be the ultimate decision maker of whether that man is good enough to marry his daughter, right? That's my only way I can spin it. Like, a girl like, the man the future husband asking the father to take his daughter's hand in marriage, right? And the
Mhm.
father is the ultimate approval. So the father ideally would have logic and reason, or at least we would hope.
Well, that's part of it, but I mean, one of the reasons that that was traditionally done is the father is giving, literally giving the daughter away.
Mhm.
It was also the father's position to keep their children chaste, keep their daughters chaste. So they were also making a commitment to the man. She was unspoiled and could bear his children. That was part of what that kind of deal was.
Mhm.
Arranged marriage and modernity likely would not be able to work anymore. That did work fairly well inside of rural districts, but now the whole world is interconnected. It's virtually impossible to arrange a marriage, and you can't really notate a person on reputation alone anymore because of social media. The reputation could be horrible; they've never done anything wrong, or the reputation could be stellar and they've done a ton of wrong.
Mhm.
Very difficult to bring any kind of arranged marriage back into the fold anymore.
Mhm. Then I guess, like, how does she know essentially if like, how does she know she's with like, a guy that's rational and logical? I
Why did
mean,
she
how
marry him?
we wouldn't know any
Because
better,
he
would
had a
we?
really big dick. I mean, like honestly, why did you marry a guy who is irrational?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing is, like, how would we know any different?
Well, what do you don't
I
know what an
know
irrational man looks like, or
I don't know. I mean, I'm just asking the question. I didn't know the idea of an alpha man or a man who, like, does have control over his emotions and, like, what a good man should look like until I kind of started into this YouTube and viewing the red pill rhetoric and things like
how
that.
come?
So
How come you didn't know those things?
well, it was more along the lines of I didn't know, like, what it should look like from a way that I could understand it, like, it's a hard way to say it. But
Okay, so Sarah, before you got
mhm,
married,
mhm,
did you want to get married to a drug addict?
no,
Did you want to get married to a guy who beat you up?
no,
Did you want to get married to a guy who spent money irresponsibly?
no.
Okay, so then it seems like you knew what a rational man was.
Yeah, yeah, I guess there's, the
So
idea of,
so
like
if you didn't marry that person. Now it's true
mhm,
there could be some case use for men who only present a rational side and you don't
mhm,
get a chance to see them when they're irrational.
mhm,
However, again, those seem to be the exceptions to the rule. Women aren't leaving them because they become irrational. They're leaving them because they don't get the butterfly effect anymore. That's why they seem to be leaving them. So
mhm,
the question becomes, I think that you knew exactly what a rational man was, but women have trouble submitting. They have trouble giving submission to somebody who is acting, comporting themselves in a way which is rational. And
mhm,
if you are to marry and you want your man to lead, then the only rational thing that you can do is submit. That's the only thing which comports with reason. How can he lead if you don't submit to his leadership? Makes no sense. That's
yeah,
backwards think. That's reverse think. I'll submit to you as soon as you lead in such a way that I want you to lead for me. It's like,
okay,
well, okay,
yeah,
that doesn't make much sense. You know what I mean?
right,
Um, he's going to lead based on his rationality. The whole reason he's a leader and you're not is because he's likely going to make better ultimate decisions than you are.
mhm.
That's why, right?
So you have to do the trust fall as a woman in order to, like, like, your hands your life is literally in their hands per
Well, I mean,
se,
unless you assume that most men are abusive and narcissistic and evil, like feminist programming attempts
Right,
to tell women. However, when I talk to women, seemingly that is not the case, that they think that
Mhm.
most men are that way. So what is the trust fall? I think that most men, if they marry you, they don't want to act in an irrational way and beat you up and do drugs. I don't think that they want to do those things,
Mhm.
right? But they're going to hit ruts like everybody else,
Yeah.
or possibly, not be overperforming or things like this. But ultimately, your job as his wife is to submit and care for him. That's your job.
Mhm.
And women are very resentful of the role because submission has taken on a very negative connotation instead of being
Right.
the praiseworthy thing that it actually is. It's praiseworthy when do you know what other men think when they see a wife serving their husband? Their respect for her, I mean, it's astronomically increases. And yet women are typically totally resistant to this,
Mhm.
thinking that the opposite is true, that they're going to be looked down upon, but nothing's further from the truth. No man in history has ever sat at another man's house and his wife has brought him a nice dinner and a beer and a kiss on the cheek, and he's gone, geez, she sure is submissive. That's yeah, I can't believe it. It's never happened even once. Never happened.
I agree with you there.
What
I
they do
think
instead is they go, "Wow, you got a great wife, man." And thank you, ma'am, for the great meal. And
Mhm.
their respect for you astronomically increases. That's what happens. So who
No,
are
I
you
agree.
competing with? Seems like women are competing with other women on how to be the biggest, right? How can we be the biggest possible to our husbands and to our significant others? Like who are you competing with? Because you're not competing with men. Men don't respect women. They respect submissive women. Men
Mhm.
don't treat well, they treat submissive wives well.
Mhm. No, I agree with you there. I wonder if it's, because social media shows, you're competing with everybody on the internet in that aspect. And women are highly competitive to other women. Women don't dress to impress men. We dress to impress the woman that we're going to be in front of.
Oh,
Um,
bullshit.
no, I'm dead serious. I mean, yeah,
Bull
you want you.
because but think
I
about it.
am
What's
a
the
woman.
entailment? What's the entailment? It's because if you're dressing in a way that another woman is impressed with, what's the first thing she says? "Oh, you look hot. Oh, man, you're super hot." What does that mean? That means other men want to have sex with you. That's what that means. So it's still the comparison is still male attention. It's still the male gaze.
I'm thinking more along the lines of, like, beauty, not hot, not like I'm not thinking like a skimpy dress or anything like that. I'm thinking, like, if I'm dressing to go to a school function, I'm going to dress beautiful because I want to be the mom. I want to be, like, presenting well as a
To who?
person, like, outwardly, so that I don't know, it's just I want to present well, it's just like,
Yeah, to whose standard though? To women's
dressing.
standard?
No, I mean, but women are the judges of women. Like,
Men are the judges of women. Like, who cares? Let's assume for a second every woman there was seething with hatred, but
mhm.
all of the men there adored you. What would the preference be?
Well, I wouldn't be trying to catch the it would be how am I presenting myself? I'm not talking about a skimpy cocktail dress. I'm
I'm not talking
talking
about a skimpy cocktail dress either. I'm saying,
like
let's say you're dressed to the hilt with a nice sundress and you had your
mhm.
makeup all done, your hair all done up, and you went to one of these events, and all of the men adored you and all of the women hated you. Would you even care?
No, not really, but I look at it as how I present my it's just the same as, like, how I dress like, dressed for the right job, right? Dress for the job you want, or, I wouldn't go in sweatpants and a t-shirt to, I don't know, to, like, my
Yeah, but
kids'
if you don't care about what
thing.
other women think, then why do that? Who gives a shit?
Well, it's just common, like, it's how I present, like, what am I
But I thought you didn't care what women think.
it's it's not it doesn't mean I'm just gonna show up as a trash bag. It's still, like, it's to me, it comes down to the idea of, like, this is
Of
who I
of caring
am.
what of caring what
No,
other
this is
people
who I
think, right?
am. This is who I am as a person. I'm going to present that externally.
so
right?
that you can adjust the thoughts of the people who are around you, right?
All right. Well, tell me how I should be doing it then.
Well, I mean, it depends on what your goals and aims are. So it's not a matter of should. I'm just explaining to you that it's really difficult to believe that when you're out to dress to impress, you're only doing it for women, because what you just got done telling me was that you don't really give a shit what women think. Ultimately, it's not really a thing which bothers you. But then, kind of out of the other side of your mouth, you're like, well, okay, it does bother me. I want women to have a certain perception of me. But it just seems like the competition is just in your head then. It's just completely in your own brain. It doesn't really outwardly exist. It's just kind of it's the same way that people make up their own enemies, right? They don't really have those enemies, but inside their head they have those enemies. It seems
Mhm.
like so there's this great line from Fight Club. It really is a good line. And
First Fight
yeah,
Club.
it really is. And the line essentially is that you're only truly free when you stop caring what people think about you,
Mhm.
right? So I don't know. I mean, for me, I think that the people who are you're supposed to care about what they think is essentially your family. Who really gives a shit about anybody else? For men, status like that does matter because it can't affect their job. It can't affect everything else. But if you're a
Mhm.
housewife, who gives a
Well, I still look at it as like if I'm going to represent my family out in public, like would they
Mhm.
be proud of me the way I walked out the door?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I just think that, generally what
Or
I
if
see.
I'm married to my
Yeah.
husband, would he want me to show up at the company picnic in a trash bag? Yeah, I mean, how am I presenting myself? And just like you said, it comes down to like it could affect his stuff, his status, and so on and so forth. So if I'm not presenting myself well, or if I get faced at a company picnic, have poor behavior, it's just the same as me dressing like a skank or dressing poorly or showing up in a trash bag per se, right? Wouldn't that concept still
I
fall
don't
in
know, it feels
line?
like a kind of bifurcation, doesn't seem like an either or.
What is bifurcation?
And like, you're giving me a false dialectic. Like, you either have to look like or you have to look great. And it seems like there's tons of wiggle room in between that, you know what I mean? But I
Mhm.
guess ultimately, I don't even care about that. It's not really even pertinent. I'm just saying that
Mhm.
I think that most women essentially dress up because they want to impress men, not because they want to impress women. I think that that's a huge cope. And I think that they just kind of cope about it and pretend that, no, I just really care about these other people who have no sexual desire towards me whatsoever. I care what they think, actually, not all of the other people who actually physically desire me. I don't really care about them, only the ones that don't. That's a really odd metric. And I just think it's female cope, honestly.
So maybe it's okay. So maybe it's the end goal would be ideally to have the best selection of if you're single walking into a room full of men and women, and ideally the end goal would be to capture or have the most options to be selected, right? But what you would do is like just the same as like competing with women competing with other women, like if I walk in the room and I am just dressed to the nines and everything's perfected and I'm just like shining and shimmering, it would kill off some confidence levels of other women who are going to naturally be insecure with me walking in the room, right? And this is me just throwing shit
You
out there.
don't give a you
But
don't give a it's gonna, "Oh,
if I
did you
can knock
destroy
out
little Susie's confidence
If
level?
I can knock out
Oh,
their
they're terrible."
confidence if I can knock out their confidence, it's naturally going to give me an extra little boost there. Maybe, just maybe.
Against what, though? For what?
Like I said, so to be able to have more options for my own selection at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what
So
I
it's for
look like
men.
for men.
So it's for men.
For the end goal to have the options I want, but I like if it's to knock out the confidence of others, to give me that extra boost, just the same way as a man says, "Oh, like, if you have more money, if you do more of this, if you do more of that, you'll have more options." Like women have their own ways of
Yeah, so
knocking
it's
out.
so it's for men.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I agree. I can see.
Okay. I mean,
All right.
I just think I've heard this cope a lot from women, and
Really? I don't
I
think it's a
have.
cope. I think
I think
it's
it's a
just
total cope. I think that they just don't wanna be like, "Look, I really like it when there's a bunch of dudes around who are highly sexually interested in me. It makes me feel good about me. I think they just don't like admitting that, but
That
that's
is,
what's
I
really
think,
going on.
I think that could be copable, but I don't know. PKFRX coming in with the $5. Andrew is a legend. Yes, I think he will go down in history for this one. Don Juan coming in with the 4.99. He says, Andrew, have you told Trollo that RP is not praxeological? It's a shame that he believes his own lies. Maybe he likes lying about his hair color as well.
I think I actually have said to him, I don't think it's a praxeology.
So, can you explain praxeology to me? Because I've heard this word a lot and I don't have a full grasp of it.
Um, you got your computer handy, you can pull up the definition. But I mean, it's basically it's like a sequence of descriptors essentially. I'll pull up the definition. Hang on.
I need the dummy version of it.
Yeah, it's not a term that's used that often. Praxeology is the theory of human action based on the notion that humans engage in purposeful behavior contrary to reflexive behavior with the unintentional behavior. So it's just giving descriptors of human behavior, essentially.
Oh, that's it.
That's it.
Oh, and there's so Rolo is like the red pill concept based on him is praxi. Yeah.
Yeah, he's claiming that it's praxeological. Yeah.
Okay. And you're saying it's not.
Yeah, I'm saying that the descriptors don't always map on to truth descriptive claims about human interaction with sexual dynamics. So, like, if you want me to give you an example of that, I
Mhm.
can.
Please.
So, there's a lot of red pillars who say men evolved to not have multiple sex partners or to have multiple sex partners, right?
Mhm.
And so that's why women are hypergamous. However, if most of the world practices monogamy, then it's actually true that we evolved to be monogamous. Otherwise, we wouldn't be practicing. Monogamy is a survival mechanism. So
Mhm.
that would be a case use of something which is said that may have been true, but is no longer true and should be adjusted. And so it doesn't map onto the reality of human behavior. That could be more sociological than it is praxeological.
Mhm. And then what is so prescriptors and descriptors? Like descriptors is
What
that
is true versus what ought to be true.
okay, so descriptors would be this is fact, this is
This
what's
is
going
true.
on, this is true,
Hmm.
versus prescriptors are this is what you should be doing.
Yes.
Based is it based on descriptors?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the like the oldest philosophical debate on planet Earth. How do you get an ought from an is? Meaning,
Mhm.
just because we know something is true, how do we then determine what we ought to do with that? So, like an example of this, let's say there's a lot of murder going on. Okay, that
Mhm.
is true. That people are getting, or killing. Let's say killing. There's a bunch of killing going on. That is true. But how do we get to we ought to put people in prison? From it is true that people are killing people. Like, how do you get from that point to the next point of what you ought do?
Mhm.
So that's why the argument leads into grounding foundations for morality. That's what the principle behind that is. Well, we ought to do the things which are moral, and we base the things we ought to do on this moral framework. And so, if this is true, what we ought to do is blank. But
Mhm.
actually getting the ought from the is like essentially impossible to do. So there's arguments on both sides. Some say there is really only oughts, and some say there really is only ises, and we can't really give oughts. And some say there's a mixture in between. It's a very old philosophical debate.
So why would somebody say there's only ises and why would somebody say there's only oughts? Like I would assume you can't have one without the other.
Well, so I'm just saying that you place them in two different categories.
Mhm.
This is true, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't know. Um, the sky is blue. That is true,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So how do you get from that to we ought to change the color of the sky? Like, how do you move to that?
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
essentially, is causing harm or good, maybe? Is that where you would, like, maneuver it
Yeah, so
into an
you could
ought?
say, yeah, that's the bridge that people are trying to utilize is the moral framework then.
Mhm,
They're saying, okay, what are the consequences? So you can look at that framework or that axiom. The consequences of X are good or they're bad based on harm done. And we could just call harm something really simple like suffering, right? That's
mhm,
maybe a good universal metric, let's say, for the hypothetical is
mhm.
suffering. Suffering is harm. Well, is the sky being blue causing you suffering? Okay,
No.
no. So then if it's not causing you suffering, then there's no ought there. We ought not do anything about it because there is no suffering. But
Mhm,
let's assume for a second that it causes 10 people in the world suffering, right? But it
mhm,
doesn't cause the rest of the world suffering. And the amount of effort that it would take to change the color of the sky, which could then actually lead potentially to more people suffering, would have to be taken into account. So what they do is they wrap all of those concepts up and call them utils or utility.
mhm,
So this is X amount of suffering to X amount of suffering. We always go with the less amount of suffering.
mhm. And that kind of bleeds into the idea of, like, recalls. When they decide to do a recall, like, it comes from, like, X amount of people would be affected, X amount in damages versus how much would it cost to just recall everything and bring it back, right? It's kind of like under the same.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's a good way to look at it. You could do
Mhm,
vehicle recalls and say, how much suffering is it going to cause for us to recall these vehicles versus how much suffering is it going to cause if we don't? You
mhm,
can package it up any way that you want. What is descriptively true is there's a defect in the vehicle. What's not clear is what you ought to do about it.
mhm. Okay, so are there times where an is happening, but, um, that per se doesn't cause any harm, but we still put an ought to it anyways?
Yeah,
Like, do you have an example of that?
yeah, like a crosswalk maybe. That might be a good example. You ought to use the crosswalk even when there's no cars around
Mhm.
because it builds up habits so that when there are cars around, you'll use the crosswalk.
Huh, that's a good one. I woulda never thought of that. G Blues coming in with a 9.99. Look, children answer to mom, mom answers to dad, dad answers to God. Who do you want to be answering to for why your family turned out fucked up or not? God or your husband? That's the accountability. Okay. Jose Marquez coming in with the $2. Shout out to the panel and salute. Thank you, Jose. Doberman owner for life. Oh, Dobermans are pretty. Thank you for the $10. Here's some Crucible crew coin. Thank you, guys. And Department of Numismatics. Am I saying that right? I think so. Coming in with the $20. Great show tonight, Miss Sarah. Questions for you. If you were lost in the woods, would you rather be with a man or a bear? And why? Also, what did you have for breakfast this morning? I
Yeah. How would you feel if you hadn't had breakfast this morning?
I well, I typically don't eat breakfast. I don't wait, where is this going? I think I had a little bit of, some cottage cheese today and a sandwich. That's about all I had today. Did I miss it? Did it go over my head? I do that a lot. It happens. All
Yeah,
right.
but how would you feel if you hadn't eaten breakfast this morning?
Hungry?
Yeah, there you go.
What does that have to do
It's
with the
a
bear?
okay, listen. So it's the stupidest it's like the dumbest meme on planet Earth. It's an old 4chan meme. Okay. So what the meme was was this completely fictitious made up study. They claimed they did it on prisoners and they could tell which ones were low IQ or high IQ as to whether or not they could answer to hypotheticals. And the way
Mhm,
that they tested if they could answer to hypotheticals was by asking them how they would have felt if they hadn't eaten breakfast this morning. And if they just answered, but I did eat breakfast this morning, or I didn't eat breakfast this morning, they actually were not engaging with the hypothetical. Um, Now, the meme itself, some people take as being gospel. They actually believe it. It's completely unscientific and totally meaningless. I asked the question because it specifically makes fun of the question. Um, but people like it when I ask the question, so I ask it occasionally.
Oh, but this question was, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Not
Yeah,
how
no,
did
but
you feel?
I asked a different question though.
Oh, but I was reading this one.
Oh,
Sorry. That was
it
my
sounds like
bad.
cope, Sarah. I'm just
Well,
gonna let you
I
know.
am coping because you asked a different question, but in that same instance, I'm still staring at this. So it's two different things. I think I get away with that one.
You gotta learn to
Uh,
multitask.
and if I were lost in the woods, would you rather be with man or bear? I am related to Daniel Boone. I think he fought a bear with his bare hands, so I don't know. I could probably take my chances with the bear, but I think the man would probably find our way out of there. So I don't know. We'll see.
You would choose the bear?
No, I'm picking both for
Yeah,
two
no,
different
but you
reasons.
can't pick both. You can only pick one: the bear or the man.
How about I'm with a man and there's a bear?
No, no,
I'll
no.
go with
That's
that
not the
one.
hypothetical. Like the bear, you can only pick one. It's a bear or it's a man, and you're trapped in the woods with him. Which one?
I'll probably actually take the man.
You would take the
Oh,
man?
I would probably take the man. I know that men have a bad reputation, and I know why that question has arisen. And we even questioned it on mine, like why societally we've come to this conclusion that like women would rather be with a bear versus a man. But I think I think more than likely, and I'm just taking a stab statistically, and I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm going to stab at it and say, statistically speaking, probably more men are good than bad. And if I end up with a bad one, I'll just punch him in the nose and we'll move on. And then it'll just be me and the bear.
What's interesting about that question is many women choose the bear. When I ask them why, they say it's because the man, a stranger, being trapped alone in the woods with him, could do all sorts of horrible things to them. Um, and they basically, there's nothing that they could do about it, right? He could just do horrible things, whereas they feel that bears are more predictable, which I understand the logic behind that. But then I follow up with this. I follow up with this single question, which is okay. So the problem is that this man is a stranger and he could do potentially all these horrible things. So let us assume for a second that another strange man came walking up to the forest who you also did not know. Would you appeal to him for help to escape the bear? And every single one of them say that they would.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
super weird.
Well, because now that the bear has turned, I mean, this is just
He
me.
hasn't turned. The bear hasn't turned.
Oh, I
You're
thought you
just
said
still
to
trapped.
escape
No,
the
you're just
bear.
still trapped with
Okay.
the bear, right?
Hmm.
The bear hasn't done anything to you yet, right? But would you appeal to a man to help extricate you from the
Hmm.
situation of being trapped with the bear? And they all say yes. It's really
So
strange.
essentially, women use men when they need them, but not when it's convenient
No, it's
in any
worse. It's
other.
worse because the logic behind why you choose the man is because, or choose the bear is because the man is certifiable and can do horrible things to you. Yet if
But
you
so is
appeal
the bear.
to, yeah, that's true. But if you appeal to another strange man, couldn't he do the exact same thing?
Hmm.
So why would you choose? I don't get it. Why would you not want to be trapped with a strange man, but would appeal to a strange man for help to not be trapped anymore? That's super weird to me. It's essentially the same question, just asked in a different way, and they answer it two totally different ways.
Hmm. Yeah, I understand why this whole thing came about, but I still think that that's like our perspective of men in today's society has just kind of gone down the toilet, and I don't know why. Maybe you have a better idea to that, but for me, it's just
It's because
like
women are irrational. That's why. It's because they're right. They've become completely irrational.
I
Because
hate
they're
being a girl today.
because well, it's because they move towards their feelings, and what they feel they consider to be their truth, and
Hmm.
their truth is truth. So that's irrational to say
Hmm.
that I think a thing is true, therefore it is irrational thinking. But women often move into their feelings and become irrational. And so they make irrational decisions. The most irrational decision I can think of is that you would rather be trapped with a wild bear than a man who's a stranger. That's completely irrational. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Now, some of them have put it in the perspective of like, what if that was a daughter, like a young girl? Does the answer change to that? Like a
No,
bear
I would much
versus a
rather
man?
that my daughter was trapped with a stranger who was a man than with a bear, for sure.
I guess in the event, like what the bear does to you is kind of almost like, well, it's just a bear. You know, if the bear were to harm you, kill you, slash you, whatever, like it's a bear, it's a wild thing. It's natural that it happened that way. Whereas if a man did horrible things to you as a woman, like you couldn't rationalize that it's not okay. You know what I mean? That should be a man, but we don't have the faith in men being men per se. I'm guessing like that's why I'd rather a bear maul me, because at least I can rationalize that in my head that would be natural to happen. Whereas if I were trapped with a man and I'd
What if
pick
the bear
advantage,
SA'd you?
that's not possible.
No, it is possible.
For a bear
Yeah.
to
Well, I mean, if a chick can go do a Tijuana donkey show, why can't a bear SA her? I don't.
you got me there.
Like,
Oh, gross.
I mean, could you rationalize it away then and be like, well, it was a wild animal, so I guess it's better?
I don't know. I'm trying to put it in that. I always like to try to put myself in other people's shoes and how they're trying to think about something and think it through. So I'm trying to find their logic of whatever it is and figure out why that would be the mass majority of women making that decision. And that's the only way I can deem it possible, because a bear is a wild animal. We expect it to do terrible things to us. Whereas a man, because of that unpredictability factor that you were speaking to, like he could be a good man or he couldn't. What are the chances? But I think most women
I
have
think it's
this.
a lot better than chances of being trapped with a bear that the bear's going to be good to you.
Yeah, I mean, but that
You
comes down
can't
to the
rationalize with a
rationale.
bear.
That's what
I
I'm
mean,
saying, is that comes down to the rationality, the missing logic piece. That's why I sat here and said, well, statistically, I don't think as many men are bad as, or yeah, I don't think we have as many bad men as we believe we have. I think more men would have a natural inclination to want to protect me, help me, and get me out of that disastrous area. You know, you can't blame a whole batch on a few bad eggs. So,
okay, hang on.
yeah.
Real quick. I want to pull this up just to like give you a good frame of reference here. Somebody told me that next time a woman said bear, to show them this. So I'm going to show this to you real quick.
Okay. I'm waiting. Are you gonna?
Yeah, hang on. I'm pulling it
Oh,
up.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was my fault. I was blaming myself.
Okay, yeah. Pull this up
Got
real
it.
quick. Here we go. Oh, hang on. It's buffering. 1 second. YouTube always does this to me. Drives me crazy. Give it a second. Hang on.
This looks like a village. Oh my god. Oh, this is reverence.
Yeah, I mean, just hang
Reverence?
on a second while it buffers for the rest of my life. It's still buffering. I don't know why it's still buffering.
It's okay. I get the
No. I want you to watch it. Hang on. So I just want to make sure that you would rather be trapped with that. That would be preferable to a man.
But I didn't say the bear.
What?
I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. Well, I'm just saying the rationale, right? Look at that thing.
Yeah.
Like, would anybody want?
Oh God.
Yeah, does that look comfortable? That doesn't look very comfortable, does it?
No, and I'm a little person, so
Looks
he
like
would
the
have.
bear paw to the skull might not be the best idea. Look at all
It's
that drool all over
terrible.
his face. Yeah, this is going really well, Sarah. I like how this is going.
Oh, I'm gonna be sick.
Yeah, yeah. Is this this is what's preferable?
I guess. And
Yeah.
that's why I sat and I reasoned it.
And so like men hear them and they're like, "Oh, that's totally rational. That's totally right. I could see why you would want to be trapped with that."
Oh my god, it's
Yeah, this
terrible.
is great, huh? This is like you gotta love it, like frame by frame, because it'll never stop buffering for the rest of my life for no good reason at all.
Oh well.
World's fastest internet, and I think it's my ad blocker. My ad blocker does it. But there you go, Sarah. Yeah, there you go. There's the bear. We're gonna do the bear attack. You can kill the screen too, by the way. But yeah, does that doesn't seem
Well, maybe, and here's another. I'm just again trying to put myself in another person's shoes and see through their point. Our only like understanding of a bear, like when was the last time you were up close and personal with a bear? Well, maybe you might have a story. Don't you hunt or
I don't think
something?
I've ever been up close and personal with one.
Mhm. So, I mean, the only time I've ever seen a bear within even view, like I can see it right in front of me, is at a zoo, captive, and it
That's not
wasn't
up close and personal though.
well, but that's the closest I've ever been to a bear, and I'm seeing it in a captivated, habitat, not doing
Hmm.
anything, not harming people because there's nothing for it to harm, right? So maybe our viewpoint, our perception of a bear might just be that of like, oh, it's behind a cage. It's okay. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be attracted to that. But that's because we
Women
don't
are delusional.
see.
So women
But
are delusional.
what I'm saying is like, if you only know something in a certain way, that could determine how you view it later. Would you rather be with this or this? So I don't. I'm just again. I'm trying to put myself in other people's shoes and see it through their eyes. All right. So, oh yeah, okay, that was the bear one. Don Juan coming in with the 4.99. Praxeology is the how we go about solving things. Thus, we need free will. Red pill doesn't believe in free. Oh, in free will, so he contradicts himself. Yeah, RP
Himself.
doesn't believe in free will, so he
Hmm.
contradicts himself. There's more. Praxeology is not empirical, thus data is needed. And then proof for women not being hypergamous, nuns, LOL. So I'm assuming that was the tail end of that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Doberman coming in again. Pineapple belongs on pizza, right, Andrew? Does it? Are you thinking about that?
It's just an uncomfortable silence. And this is my disapproving stare.
In pineapple pizza? Pineapple on pizza? You don't like pineapple on
I'm very
pizza?
disappointed with this super chatter, and I feel like he should leave the internet forever.
Oh, Doberman. I'm not a fan of pineapple on pizza at all. So and then how will we go about solving things? Oh, I guess that came from I'm guessing that has to do with the red pill stuff. How we will go about solving things.
Yeah,
I
but
must have missed something.
the if you're saying that, that's a descriptive claim though. That is a descriptive claim. Like you need to remember that you're making descriptive. If you're saying the praxeology is how we go about solving things, then how we go about solving things are descriptors. They're still not oughts. They're still not moral imperatives. They're just descriptors.
Give
So,
me just a second, Andrew.
all right. Yeah, I got to get rolling here pretty quick anyway. It's past midnight, so.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, and then Clover Tack comes in with the $5 saying chicks say bears because chicks are good at making sandwiches. So they have a picnic basket with sandwiches, and we know that bears love picnic baskets.
Hey,
That's
boo boo.
hey boo boo,
We have to get the
Yogi
picnic baskets,
Bear.
boo boo. Ranger Dan will take them.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Andrew. This has been fun, and I'm incredibly appreciative of your time and especially the mansplaining of things for me because I've always had a lot of questions, but my
It's
answers,
good for you, Sarah.
yeah. No, I like learning. I
It's
like
good for you
asking
to have things
questions.
mansplained.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually I call my father, but for this kind of stuff, I'd
Well, I
imagine
hope
you
he
might have
mansplains
some.
too, as is his noble right.
Yes, yes. My father has very good advice, and he's a wonderful person. I look up to him ever so dearly. So he is my rock. That's why he calls me Pebble, because if he's my rock, then I'm his little pebble. But,
I
anyways,
I I don't give a anyway. Are you? I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you another time.